other MPs.
And MPs are given plenty of advice on such matters. This extract from a National Cybersecurity Centre briefing for MPs talks specifically about messaging apps. Consider the recipient, it says. Are they who they say they are? And it warns MPs to avoid accepting message requests from unknown accounts. Training, though, isn't mandatory, and some now think that it should be. But I spoke to one MP who was targeted by this scam, who told me it was so obviously a scam that they deleted it immediately. They said it was extraordinary that anybody had replied at all. One former police officer, once in charge of MPs' protection, agreed.
One would like to think there's some common sense and some intelligence being practiced around personal behaviour. I think what it will do is I imagine the kind of ears will prick up across some of our adversaries, shall we say, to recognise that actually this is a technique that our MPs are vulnerable to.
And there's the problem. Even if the impact of this latest scandal can be contained, it's highlighted a weakness that can be exploited. Next time, it could be worse.
Matthew, let's have a chat about this, because you mentioned there in your piece that you had spoken to MPs who'd received this scam, some of them obviously spotting it and deleting it straight away, but I'd love to know more about what they told you. Yeah, so the total number of MPs affected by this, we don't actually know. I mean, at the moment, most counts put it at something over a dozen. But, you know, this is, according to the first news website that broke the story, Politico, last week, they put the messages anywhere back to January 2023. So this has been going on for some time. So the chances are there are quite high numbers of people potentially involved in this. Now, the ones I've spoken to, you mentioned there that the first one rightly basically deleted it. He said it was so obvious that it was a scam that it hadn't even occurred to him that he would respond in any way, shape or form. He simply deleted the message. And he said it was extraordinary to him that anybody had actually responded to it. And then, you know, another few MPs have come out publicly and said that they were targets of this. Another one's just happened, actually. Dr. Luke Evans, Tory MP for Bosworth, has just said so in a Facebook video. And he, again, was targeted with naked photographs, he said, from a woman. And what's interesting is that all of the targets that I'm aware of this scam were men. Now, some of them were gay, some of them were straight, and they were either targeted by someone claiming to be called Abby. In this case, it was a woman claiming to be called Abby, or they were targeted by a male claiming to be called Charlie. And they began with flirty text messages, often dropping in personal details that they might give the impression that they knew the MP in some way, shape or form. And then very, very quickly, those flirty messages seem to have escalated into something quite explicitly sexual. And at that point, some MPs said, right, well, no, that's obviously a scam, I will get rid of that. But a couple, at least, we think, went further and actually responded with sexual messages of their own. And that's where this gets difficult. And it's where experts, as you heard in my piece, are concerned that even in spite of the warnings and stuff that are given to MPs ultimately are human, they make mistakes, and sometimes when you're in positions of responsibility, as MPs and indeed ministers are, those can have quite difficult consequences. Certainly can. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. And that story is sure to feature in tomorrow's newspapers. We'll have our extended press preview, in fact, and news review from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining Gillian Joseph will be the CEO of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and also Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. Next, Israel's military has said its attack, which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, was a grave mistake. 3 of those killed were former British servicemen there to protect the people on a humanitarian effort. Several senior officers have been dismissed, and the military has acknowledged there was a series of failures which resulted in the convoy being targeted. We've just had this update from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
It's a fairly lengthy briefing last night. Small group of foreign journalists briefed immediately after foreign ambassadors and just before the founder of World Central Kitchen, Jose Andreas, was briefed by the Israeli military. So there was an attempt, of course, by the Israelis to make sure that they were explaining to all the relevant parties what the investigation had found and what, in their opinion, had gone wrong. I felt that there was not sort of unjustly, but there was an attempt to explain how this was being viewed and the incident was being viewed by the drone pilot and the brigade cell at the heart of it. But the fact is they made a tragic error, and that error was that they misidentified an individual getting into one of the 3 World Central Kitchen vehicles. And rather than seeing that individual as being one of the aid workers, they thought, wrongly, he had a gun, and therefore they immediately associated him with Hamas, and all of those vehicles were then Hamas vehicles, despite the fact that they didn't see any other gunmen or even think they saw any other gunmen on the other 2 vehicles. But that did not stop them firing one after the other at each of the 3 vehicles in turn and killing everybody there. We were shown some of the drone video, but not all of it. And in my opinion, we didn't see that crucial moment when the misinterpretation was made, when the individual getting into the vehicle was misidentified as a Hamas gunman. But the IDF did appear to be taking this seriously. I think the fact that they have sacked a number of their senior officers and reprimanded some very senior commanders is evidence of that. However, I think for a lot of people, this has exposed failings in the IDF's operating procedures and rules of engagement. And some people have been saying to me, well, you know, this was the subject of a major investigation. What about those events that weren't the subject of a major investigation? What about the accusations that thousands of civilians have died, more than almost 200 aid workers have died, when investigations weren't carried out? How can we have faith in the IDF going forward? We will see whether or not this goes to criminal charges. No decision's been made on that yet.
Alistair Munkle there. Now, it's been revealed that a key witness in the Madeleine McCann investigation is terminally ill with cancer. It comes as Christian B., the main suspect, is in court charged with unrelated sex crimes. From Germany, here's our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt.
The witness didn't want to add to his official evidence, but apart from cutting a striking figure in court, Michael Tarchel had certainly dropped a bombshell. And it may just have helped the man in the dock, his former pal Christian B., on trial for sex crimes. What the witness said could set back the investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Mr. Tarchel told the court that another witness in this trial, a friend and a man who is central to the Madeleine McCann investigation, was dying from cancer and may not have long to live.
He said she didn't scream.
He was talking about this man, Helga Busching, the informant who triggered investigators' suspicions about Christian B. over Madeleine. 7 years ago, he told British police that Christian B. had confessed to him. He'd confided about Madeleine. She didn't cry when I took her. Ever since then, police have been trying to find conclusive clues, but all they have is circumstantial evidence. Christian B. is a convicted child sex offender. He lived close to the holiday apartment where Madeleine vanished. Mobile phone data put him near the apartment at the time. He changed the registration of his car the next day, but none of his vehicles has provided any forensic evidence of Madeleine. Mr. Busching gave evidence in the current trial this week, but he may not be around if Christian B. is ever charged in the Madeleine case. Mr. Tarchel was friends with Christian B. 20 years ago, he said in court. He told me how he earned money and that he burgled tourists' houses at night and would even break in when they were sleeping, he said. He broke in once, naked, and a teenage girl woke up and screamed. At Christian B.'s house, he said, there were sex toys scattered around and stolen property hidden away. Christian B. boasted how he used a post to tie up a teenage girl. The sex crimes trial may not finish until the autumn. Another potential trial here in the Madeleine case could now be much longer away. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Braunschweig, Germany.
Next, consultants in England have accepted a pay deal offered by the government, ending a year-long dispute which led to unprecedented strike action. 83% of senior doctors voted in favour of the proposal put forward by the British Medical Association. Sky's Shaman Freeman-Powell has more.
Hey, Rishi, you're so tight, you make us strike. Hey, Rishi! Hey, Rishi!
For the best part of a year, it's felt like every part of the NHS has been on the picket line, with NHS staff walking off wards to call for more pay and better working conditions. Today, a deal with senior doctors in England was finally struck after being accepted by 83% of members of two major trade unions. Consultants had already agreed a 6% increase last year. A new offer includes an extra 2.85% for those between 4 and 7 years into their consultant careers, meaning consultant salaries will now range from £99,500 to nearly £132,000 a year.
It is only a first step, and I think the next things that consultants will be doing will be to see what the Doctors and Dentists Review Body recommendations are for the coming round and how the government responds. It's not the end of the road.
And the government may not be out of the woods just yet, as many others in the NHS are disgruntled. RCN nurses remain in dispute over their pay, while speciality doctors have recently rejected their latest deal. And junior doctors, well, they're threatening that more strike action could be on the way.
I've said all along that I want to find a fair and reasonable settlement with junior doctors as well, and I believe we can do that. I particularly want to look at their working conditions.
What do you want? Fair pay! How do you get it? Strike!
Pay wasn't the only problem on the picket line. Working conditions are what keep patients safe. And as unions and politicians continue to battle it out, they are the ones who will pay the price. Shaman Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
Now, there was a bit of a small shake in the Big Apple today as an earthquake struck the east coast of the US, causing buildings to move in New York City. People throughout the city, including in this coffee shop, felt the full force of the tremor. Officials reported a quake with a preliminary magnitude of 4.8, so not a small quake at all, centred near New Jersey. The effect of the tremor could be seen in this home in New Jersey as well. It prompted flights to be grounded throughout New York for a short time. There you go. What's going on there? Just get a sense of things falling off the walls. New York's mayor has stressed that the situation was under control. Pop star Anastasia says she feared she had a brain tumour, but it was actually symptoms of the menopause. The 55-year-old star told the podcast she was suffering from exhaustion and brain fog, which she didn't know were hormone-related. 4 days of severe rail disruption is underway as train drivers continue their long-running strikes. There was no service on the West Coast Main Line, while drivers will also walk out tomorrow and Monday in a dispute over pay which has lasted nearly 2 years. Time to bring in our news reviewers then on this. With us for the next couple of hours, DJ, journalist and author Dave Haslam and actor and impressionist Jan Ravens join me now. Good to have you both here.
Good to be here.
Glad you made it, because you use the West Coast Main Line all the time.
I know. Well, look, I mean, the Euston Station is awful. Avanti trains, I've no idea why they still have the franchise. But, of course, the drivers aren't just striking for pay, they're also striking to improve the service.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's an important point to make. And it has dragged on and on and on. The government haven't got don't seem to have any motivation to get involved and end the strike. And, you know, the passengers are the ones who suffer.
I'm a passenger too. I travel up from the south. I won't say which rail service I use, but it's based in the south. Figure it out. Which could it be? It's probably only one choice. It's always late. It seems to me that, and they'll probably say that it's not, but it feels like it's always late, and it's just not what it used to be. I mean, what I have to say though, Jan, rail drivers get about £60,000 a year. I mean, that's not a bad salary at all, is it? And they're asking for a pay rise on top of that. They'll take it up to about 65. Are they overstretching it a bit?
I couldn't possibly comment. I mean, are they on 60 grand a year?
Yeah.
Do they work very long hours?
I don't know, to be fair. Maybe they do.
I don't know. I don't know either. I mean, well, the short answer is I don't know, but I do love Mick Lynch. That's all.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot of other people involved in the rail strike are, you know, are people who don't earn anything like that. You know, it's for all the crews and the people who are working on the stations. You know, I mean, the infrastructure of our country is falling apart, isn't it? There's sewage in the rivers and...
Do you think there's any chance the railways will get nationalised anytime soon? I mean...
Well, if Labour win the next general election, that's one thing they will do. We will talk more about this and just general crumbling of various sorts of things later on. But first, you're watching Friday Night on Sky News coming up. Yeah, exactly, feel-good factor. Israel opens up a new aid routes into Gaza after apologising for a strike in which 7 aid workers were killed. And also, how can we guarantee national security won't be compromised because of the poor judgment of politicians?
It's one of the most dramatic sights in nature. A total solar eclipse, when day turns to night in a rare and spectacular sight. Join millions of people across Mexico, the US and Canada and watch the total eclipse live in a special programme on Sky News.
So we live on a double-decker bus, and we predominantly use solar panels to power everything that needs electricity in the bus. So we don't have an electric bill, we don't have a gas bill for our cooking, and that money we're now saving to buy some land to do something different with. You don't need pure sunshine to get solar panel onto the bus, so even when it's overcast, you do still take on power. Again, it comes down to how much battery power you have to store the energy that you've obviously took in. And obviously, the more power you have banked, obviously, the longer that will last.
So we moved on in, what year was it?
22.
22? Yeah, we've been on it like over a year now. It wasn't a costly thing. We managed to buy the bus and convert it for under 10 grand. We felt quite lucky that we found some refurbished house solar panels. So that's what we've got on the roof, isn't it?
Yes, I think our whole solar system cost us under £500. That was including wiring, the solar panels and the controller and batteries. No, so we move around every 2 days. It goes wherever we go. So we've got a lot of festivals this year. So we're going to be touring the UK, doing a lot of festivals up and down the country, which will be really fun. Yeah, so we've got the generator if we really need it. But in the year and a half that we've been on the bus, I can count on 2 fingers the amount of times that we've had issues with power, where we've had to use the generator to top up. Apart from that, we bank enough power from what we pull in to manage everything that we've got.
Welcome back to Friday Night. I'm Matt Barbet. Now, Israel has tested relations with its allies to the limit this week after the Israel Defence Force admitted killing 7 aid workers, including 3 British citizens, following an attack on a food convoy in Gaza. International condemnation was swift, but despite strong words from our leaders, the US and UK continue to offer Israel a supply of arms. What would it take, though, to see that support start to waver?
The Israeli military says the strike, which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, was a misidentification.
A full, urgent and transparent inquiry into how this dreadful event was allowed to happen. And we want to see that happen very, very quickly.
It is a mistake, a misidentification, and we have to get to the bottom of this. And this is precisely what we're doing.
We shouldn't have a situation where people who are simply trying to help their fellow human beings are themselves at grave risk.
Australia expects full accountability for the deaths of aid workers, which is completely unacceptable.
The airstrikes on our convoy, I don't think were an unfortunate mistake. It was really a direct attack on a clearly marked vehicles whose movements were known by everybody at the IDF.
The 3 British aid workers who died have been named as 57-year-old John Chapman, 47-year-old James Kirby, and 33-year-old James Henderson.
He's fought in these wars and come home with not a scratch, and he goes out to do something, you know, helpful.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Still with me tonight, Dave Haslam and Jan Ravens. Not an easy thing to discuss.
It's not, is it? It's like unimaginable. And apparently, you know, they bombed one car and they all, you know, some of them survived even that scarpered to another car. And then, you know, and they, you know, from one car to the other. And it just, you know, there have been nearly 200 aid workers killed. It's not just these 7. And I mean, I don't know if there's, you know, celebrity chef involvement or British people involved or whatever, but it seems that, like, you know, this isn't the first time this has happened. And the lack of communication when these roads that the vans and the cars are on have been designated as routes for humanitarian aid. And everybody is supposed to know about that. And they've got a thing on the top saying, you know, we are who we are. It seems like the lack of care is not careless. It's just deliberate. It's a deliberate thing. It seems to me.
Well, look, the Israelis say this was a mistake. It was at night time, and war is a messy thing.
Yeah.
And we know there are miserable stories on all sides. In fact, it's 6 months this weekend since that attack in Israel that prompted all of this action as well.
But is there going to be a full and transparent inquiry as to all the babies that have been killed and the hospitals destroyed and the other 190, 200-odd aid workers being killed? Why not? I mean, you know, unfortunately, it's because of the colour of the skin of some of the aid workers that this story seems to become a bit of a turning point in what's happening in Gaza. But it's just so sad that it's taken that to wake people up to what's happening.
It does seem like every time you say, you know, you've bombed this hospital, you know, and obviously terrible things happened on that day 6 months ago, and that, you know, that can't be denied at any point. However, to bomb hospitals where doctors are trying under horrific circumstances to save babies and, you know, mothers giving birth and, you know, things happening without anaesthetic, and I mean, surely those are war crimes.
Doctors have been killed, journalists have been killed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a killing spree. And the thing is, I think because the Israelis dehumanised the Palestinians for decades, the deaths of Palestinians just haven't been acknowledged as the war crime that it is. But because they don't demonise the foreign aid workers, when they get killed, and I don't believe that it was an accident, you know, the Israeli forces are always talking about how they're able to target with precision. They were talking about with targeting with precision. They said that 5 months ago when they launched. And they were going after the terrorists. And they seemed full of confidence that they had the equipment and they had the moral authority to do that.
But before they moved into Gaza, everybody knew it was going to be difficult, nigh impossible to, as they wanted to eradicate Hamas. And they would say that they had a right to defend themselves. They would say that when it comes to things like the Al-Shifa hospital, that Hamas were using that hospital. We don't know. There are no journalists there independently, as much as we would like to be there. We don't know what's going on. But I'm sure in the fullness of time, there'll be more investigating into what happened. The question here, Dave, and I'll ask you first, is whether we should be withdrawing arms. Because the fact of the matter is the amount of arms we sell as a country to Israel is minuscule, something like 0.02% of what they buy.
Isn't there? There's a principle. And, you know, it could have been British weapons that have killed those aid workers.
Could have been.
And you know, the irony is, and I think Netanyahu actually knows this, is that he's not bringing peace. You know, sometimes warmongers talk about, you know, there's a war in order to create peace. We need this to happen. But I think Israel are going to be less safe in the future. I think because he's radicalising yet another generation of Palestinians, but also so many people around the world who see the Israelis as having not the moral authority they may have done previously.
Jan, it seems the US are in a very difficult position because they are beholden to supplying defence, as they would put it. Israel would put it to Israel, but simultaneously frustrated by the lack of aid going into Gaza, so much so they're trying to do it themselves by, you know, building a pontoon and everything else off Gaza. They're in between a rock and a hard place, the Americans, aren't they?
Well, they are, but I kind of I agree that, you know, it's time, you know, as Dave says, to take a stand as a principle, you know, and if it's taken this incident to, you know, to cause people to stop and say, hang on, what actually is, what is their kind of their stratagem here, and if it does seem to be, you know, careless to the point of deliberation, then I think that, you know, I mean, however small our contribution is, I think I heard somebody on Newsnight last night saying that actually we provide a very small proportion of 0.02, whatever it was, but nonetheless, what we provide are small components. So we're providing small components for other weapons. So they're actually quite vital, even though it's a very small amount. It's kind of, you know, all these bigger things can't survive without them. So actually, it would have an effect. And I think, you know, also with the Americans, but, you know, the Americans and, you know, I mean, the Americans have a very strong pro-Israel lobby, and, you know, that exists in this country too, as Alan Duncan was saying the other day. He was saying that Rishi Sunak is surrounded by a lot of pro-Israel people who are stopping him from, you know, making this sort of stand at this point. And, you know, I've got, you know, lots of Jewish friends. I'm not anti-Israel whatsoever. You know, and I absolutely understand the terrible offence that was, you know, that was done to them in the first place. But nonetheless, that doesn't make what's going on now, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. And that's, you know...
There've been plenty of people in Israel who haven't wanted the government to do this either, because we've seen the response. Thanks both for now. You're watching Friday Night on Sky News. Coming up, plenty more from our news reviewers, Dave Haslam and Jan Ravens, including who set the Westminster honey trap. The Conservative MP William Ragg admits he was the victim of a blackmail plot in which he handed over other MPs' information. Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet. Now, the news for the last 24 hours has been dominated by the emerging scandal about explicit text messages being sent to politicians and staff in Westminster. And now the Conservative MP William Wragg has admitted handing over their personal phone numbers to a man he met on a dating app. And we've heard tonight that another Tory MP, Luke Evans, says he was the victim of cyber flashing too, and he reported the matter to the police. With us this evening to discuss this, Dave Haslam and Jan Ravens, of course. Dave, what's your instinctive reaction to this whole story?
Well, Tory sleaze. I mean, it reminds me very much of the lead-up to Blair's landslide, where I think the population were just fed up of John Major's government and all the Tory sleaze that was going on in the 90s. I mean, it sounds daft, but I've got a lot of friends who use Grindr, so I've not got an issue with any politician or anyone using Grindr.
No.
But the weakness of the man to then involve other people and to give these numbers, I think, is very poor. But I'm guessing because he's not fighting in the next election, then they're hoping this will just go away,
well,
as he's going away.
And he's admitted his weakness. He has apologised. A lot of people, Jan, are seeing him as a victim as well because he was hoodwinked into sharing photos, and then he says they had... do you know what's that word that comes out again? Compromat.
Yeah.
They had compromat on him, and they handed over more numbers. And we don't know, by the way, it could be numbers of Labour MPs, Lib Dem MPs. We don't know who the rest of them are.
I think there are some Labour MPs, because it's not just Tory MPs. There's some journalists apparently as well, and Labour MPs. And Jeremy Hunter said he's made a sincere and fulsome apology. I mean, I do feel sorry for this guy, because you can only imagine the kind of churning that he was going through, and he does he's not a kind of, I don't think he's a very robust, he's had he's said he suffers from anxiety and depression, and I can only sympathise very very much with that, but I do think that if you can't trust the proper investigative channels to be on your side as an MP in the House of Commons, if you can't get in touch with the authorities and say, this has happened to me, dob the Grindr guy in, but to give these numbers. And because when this all sort of was nobody quite knew what was happening, but all these people had been what they call it, phishing.
Spearfishing.
Spearfishing. All these people have been victims of that, and nobody knew quite why. And is it Russia, and is it China, and is it a rogue state, and what's going on? And then it turns out to be a guy who's been on Grindr, who's given away other people's numbers because he sent dick pics to somebody else, and it's like, what?
Yes. You couldn't make it up. And if you did, everyone would go, that's too simple a story.
Yeah.
But it's also about trust, isn't it? I mean, in that process where he's not come clean about stuff, he's, for whatever reason, not told the truth. And I think that, politicians should be, I mean, as Sunak said, when he was made PM, he talked about cleaning up politics and so on. And, I mean, obviously, it's personally regrettable for him, I'm sure, but, it's the other thing is the naivety, and they're dealing with our legislation.
Well, that's
and they're telling children to put their mobile phones away.
Yeah.
And then they're engaging in this kind of behaviour.
That's a question I want to ask, is so much of governing is done by WhatsApp. Is that right? You would think that, I mean, and I know when they become MPs, they get a bit of a goodie bag of some equipment and told what to do, and here's the rules. And, you'd think if you're an elected official, that's exactly what you'd be doing. But the fact that there aren't more checks and balances in place, I heard from my colleague Matthew earlier on that it's not compulsory for them to do training. What do you think it should be? It seems a bit of a miss if it's not.
It's quite basic, though. I mean, however much training you have of, don't have the same password for this, and don't. If you give other people's personal numbers to some bloke you've met on a dating app, it doesn't matter how much training you've had. it beggars belief that he would do it. And obviously he was in a kind of, he was a rabbit in the headlights. He didn't know what to do. And he must. I mean, apparently they do have quite. They have somebody from Cheltenham come along and say, this, okay, chaps, this is what we've got to do, and gives them the whole procedure in security. But they're human.
Yeah, I'm a human, but I have a rule of thumb is I don't really send naked pictures of myself around to people.
Well,
call me old-fashioned.
People do that.
Yeah, people certainly do. They certainly do. And we'll leave it there for now, Dave. Thank you very much, usefully. Now, look, spring is hopefully in the air, depending on storms and things like that coming over the weekend. And the Prime Minister was once again in a chipper mood this week, suggesting the country had turned a corner ahead of the general election, whenever that's going to be. But as Storm Kathleen does head our way, dark clouds seem to be gathering above number 10. A new poll suggests not only could the government lose power, but the Conservatives might be facing electoral wipeouts. The poll suggests 11 high-profile cabinet ministers are set to lose their seats. Dave, you alluded to 1997. You said now feels similar to that. I get a sense of where your sympathies may lie, but does it feel that way to you now?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the polls have been quite consistent, haven't they, for a long while. Sunak has attempted various strategies to reverse that. He doesn't know whether to go left. He seems to be always going right, but that doesn't seem to be working. I mean, I do think that sometimes we overthink what the electorate are thinking. I don't think the electorate go through all the campaign details.
No.
They might not even know who half these people are, but sometimes they just want a change. They're just fed up of things not getting better, of, the Tories have been in for 14 years. The country's in a terrible state. It's that kind of give somebody else a go. I'm not saying, I mean, obviously I go through the minutiae of all the policies, but I'm saying that's kind of what was in the air before Blair. It was like, we need a new lot of faces. We want to give somebody else a chance to turn it around.
Yeah. Jan, you've got a chance now. Quick word from you on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Tories seem to have been behaving for the last, year or so. I mean, certainly since Rishi Sunak got in, that, we're going to do things in a new way. We're going to make all these problems go. And you think, but, you've been in 14 years. These are all your problems. And the way they've run things down, and, I don't know how, it'll be interesting to see, when Labour do get in, it'll be interesting to see how long it takes to mend things, because things have got into such a sorry state, and then the Tories are going to go, oh, it's not so good when now you're in, is it? And you'll think, yeah, but it got so, lack of investment has got so acute.
Well, if history is repeating itself in terms of 1997, it could be in terms of 2010, because they left a note saying there's no more money, and that might be what Labour finds should they win the election. The poll suggests they will have a landslide. Also this week, Scotland introduced a new hate crime law on April the 1st, although it was no joke for J.K. Rowling. The Harry Potter author took to social media daring Police Scotland to arrest her for misgendering high-profile trans women, including the broadcaster India Willoughby, who I've worked with, as it happens, as well as a number of convicted sex offenders. The police declined to do so, saying her comments did not meet the threshold to be deemed criminal, but they were still inundated with more than 3,000 complaints under the new law in just 2 days, raising concerns officers could be even more overwhelmed by the new legislation. I don't know if she's still on holiday, but J.K. Rowling certainly was when she went out with this. It's not so much, I don't want to discuss her points of view on this kind of thing. It's more whether the law is just going to add more to the caseload of coppers who are already pretty, they've got a lot of work on their hands. And plus, we know that trust in the police or police forces up and down the country is also pretty low at the moment. Dave?
Well, what it's done is it's proved that the new rule is unworkable. The legislation's gone through, but it's not practical. I mean, if the police are getting inundated with that, the police are finding all the other crimes hard to deal with. And being asked to get involved in this kind of thing, I think, puts them in a very difficult position. doing the dirty work for the politicians. I mean, Rangers and Celtic are going to be playing again soon. At that football ground, there's going to be tens of thousands of mostly young men singing the kind of songs which I think, in the cold light of day, you would call hate-filled. So what are the police going to do? And the thing is that once the police get involved, they're setting precedents. So I don't blame them for just standing off and just trying to almost wish it all away.
I mean, if they're going to call them crimes and, you know, press charges and there's going to be court cases, I mean, the courts... the courts are another place where there's so much backlog. You know, women waiting for, you know, for their trial, for, you know, their rape or, you know, violence against women cases. You know, these women have been through these traumatic events, and, you know, men too, obviously. And they can't deal with what we've got already. And you know, as you say, adding in another crime, it just seems mad. I mean, I'm all for everybody doing, you know, what they want to do and being who they want to be, but making it a crime, I think, yeah, we haven't got time for it.
We have got time for breaking news right now, though. The UK Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport have suspended their strike action that they were due to take for 4 days from April the 11th in a dispute over working conditions. So that strike planned for Heathrow has been called off for the time being. Dave, Jan, thanks very much indeed for now. We'll be back with you after 8 o'clock when we'll continue to discuss the week's news. And coming up in the sport, we have action from the practice for this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix. Could a former world champion be set for a return to the grid?
Push the protesters further back here. There's around 200 or 300 still remaining.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
This van goes onto the streets of Plymouth 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
These facilities at the moment are a lifesaver. It's all we've got.
From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region, hearing from people who have real stories.
I'm going to have nowhere to live for about 3 or 4 months.
There are still people inside the properties here.
They're coming from the epicentre of what is now a global health pandemic. Seeing and speaking to young women who were selling themselves right on the high street. It was desperately sad, and the fact it was happening right in the heart of this community. Before Brexit, these oysters were being exported to the EU, but the trade stopped overnight.
What's your feeling about the future then?
Blake, might all be finished, I don't know.
Welcome back. You're watching Friday Night here on Sky News. Teddy's here with the sports. Manchester United take on Liverpool this weekend, a match that could go some way to deciding the Premier League title. Look, Teddy, you know I'm a Liverpool fan, and I really hope it does go some way to deciding the Premier League title.
Well, I bet you do as well. There's a context here that not a lot of people have spoken about, because obviously it's a fascinating title race, Liverpool, Arsenal and Manchester City, but Liverpool are currently on 19 First Division titles, Premier League titles,
I know.
I'm told.
Yes.
Man United are on 20.
Funny that.
So there's a big subplot, 30 miles between the teams, Anfield and Old Trafford, two most successful teams in Britain. United have won more FA Cups, Liverpool have won more European Cups, so there's a big rivalry historically there. And it is, I think, going to be interesting to see what Arsenal do. They go to Brighton tomorrow evening. Before that, Manchester City go to Crystal Palace. But as it stands, Liverpool 2 points clear, looking for Jurgen Klopp to sign off what potentially could be a treble now with the Europa League. Atalanta's coming up next week. So it's a huge game at Old Trafford. Manchester United fans' hopes may have been raised a few weeks ago in the FA Cup. There was an epic, chaotic game, you're shaking your head, which United won in extra time with Amad Diallo, 4-3. But this week, been a lot of focus on the negative side. Liverpool have been marching on. They beat Sheffield United 3-1. But on Manchester United, the form, losing at Stamford Bridge 4-3 last night. 2 goals in stoppage time. Didn't seem to mark Cole Palmer from a corner in the 100th minute, which was shocking to a lot of people. This after pretty bleak performance at Brentford that ended in a 1-1 draw, but slightly fortuitous. They've conceded 225 shots this year, which is the worst of any team in the European leagues. There is some tactical analysis out there suggests that this is a theory of Erik ten Hag's to allow people to shoot from farther out. But you're up against Liverpool. They're in form, 16 wins in all competitions. It's the best record in Europe so far this year. And they've got Mo Salah, I think he's got 13 goals in 14 against Manchester United. So it's going to be a daunting challenge at Old Trafford.
I watched the Sheffield United match last night. And by the way, Alexis McAllister's absolute rocket was a sight to behold. But they put up a stat saying that Liverpool have scored more goals in all competitions than any other team in the top 5 European leagues. They had the highest amount of possession last night ever in the Premier League against Sheffield United, 82%, I think. And, of course, United losing to Chelsea, that's the latest turnaround in the Premier League ever, isn't it? I think Cole Palmer scored
100th and the 101st minute, the penalty in the Cole Palmer shot,
And you're right, we owe them for knocking us out of the FA Cup. So I'm pretty confident this weekend that Liverpool are going to turn them over.
Well, it was 0-0 earlier in the season at Anfield. That's the only caveat, isn't it? It was, but Liverpool did have 34 shots in that, so it kind of says that there's a trend here. Erik ten Hag, by the way, today has said that he's pretty confident that he keeps his job next season regardless. But the statistics are mounting up. It's 17 losses in all competitions for Manchester United, the worst run since 1978, so pre-Ferguson era. It's the worst run in the Premier League, matching the 2014 season, 2013-14, when David Moyes, if you remember, got sacked before the season was out. That's 10-year anniversary coming up of that. So it's difficult times for Manchester United, but I guess you never say never. They've got Alejandro Garnacho in good form, maybe on the counter-attack. We shall see. But that's the big game on Sunday. Coming up in the next hour, we'll talk about another big game Sunday lunchtime as well, the Old Firm game between Rangers and Celtic. But coming up in the Sport Full Bulletin, we've got news of Formula One and big cricket news for England fans.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Yeah, more on the big match first. The Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has appealed for fans of his team of Manchester United to avoid tragedy chanting at Saturday's Premier League match at Old Trafford. Last month's FA Cup meeting was marred by tragedy chanting, resulting in arrests.
Let's just show a bit of class in these moments. So don't do that. Don't sing this or sing that. Just show class. Have a fight on the pitch. Let's play football. Let's, if you want, be happy if we lose or whatever. These kind of things, that's all fine. But besides that, just show a bit of class. That would be really my wish for.
England bowler Jofra Archer won't play Test cricket in 2024. That's according to the men's team managing director Rob Key. Archer hasn't played for England since March 2023 due to an elbow injury. But Key says the plan is to have Archer ready for the T20 World Cup, which begins in June. To F1, and Mercedes boss Toto Wolff says he won't discount 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel as Lewis Hamilton's replacement next year. Hamilton will join Ferrari in 2025, while Vettel retired in 2022.
Sebastian is someone that you can never discount. I think his track record is phenomenal. You know, we want to continue to have these discussions and keep the options open. But at that stage, I think it's much too early for us to commit to a driver, whether very young or whether very experienced.
Meanwhile, on the track, the world champion Max Verstappen was quickest in first practice for Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix. The session saw Williams driver Logan Sargent crash into the wall at high speed, but thankfully the American walked away. Big crash for Sargent then. It was better news for the 7-time champion Hamilton, who went 5th quickest in what he's now called the best session of the year for Mercedes. Qualifying begins at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Tour de France champion Jonas Vingegaard remains hospitalised in Spain a day after he broke his collarbone and several ribs in a crash during the Tour of Basque country. Vingegaard's team said he also suffered a collapsed lung and a pulmonary contusion. Vingegaard was hardly moving as he was put in an ambulance wearing an oxygen mask and a neck brace after that crash occurred on Thursday. Golf, Rory McIlroy looks in decent form heading into the first major of the year next week. He shot 2 under par, a round of 70 at the Valero Open in Texas, but he hit a spectator with one of his shots. McIlroy started his second round on the back 9. He was level par heading down the par 5 18th when he hit a fan with his second shot to the green. Yeah, looked pretty painful, this one, dropping from some height. McIlroy, though, recovered to make birdie. Hopefully the fan's all right as well. Yeah, he's currently 6 off the lead there. That's all for now. Head over to Sky Sports News for updates on the Lioness as Euro 2025 qualifier against Sweden kicks off at 8.
Extra time? Good, because these things are only 5 seconds long.
It's amazing more people aren't hit by golf balls, isn't it? Just a reminder of that breaking news that UK Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport have suspended the strike action they were due to take for 4 days from April the 11th in a dispute over working conditions. Now, let's take a look at your weekend weather. Powerful storm Kathleen will bring strong winds to many parts of Britain and Ireland this weekend. The worst of the weather will be in the west. Back to this evening, and we've still got a few showers over Scotland, but most other areas are under a large blanket of cloud. The winds are picking up in the southwest, and we're seeing some heavy rain over the south of Ireland and southwest England. That heavy rain will push northwards during the night, and the strong winds will spread up the west coast. Behind the rain, the skies are a bit clearer with just a few showers in the west. Saturday, very windy indeed. Watch out for that. The strongest winds will be around western coasts, where they could be gusting up to 70 miles per hour. The persistent rain will then clear northwards, leaving sunshine and showers. It'll be very warm, particularly in the east, where it is likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. You're watching Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet. Coming up in the next hour, a second MP confirms he was targeted in an online blackmail sting after Tory William Ragg admitted he gave away contact details of other politicians.
Formula One has 500 million fans, and Salesforce helps them turn all that data into a single view of each one. Like Grace. Grace is a super fan with a lot of favorites. Formula One can track all that data in real time to give her the perfect fan moment at the perfect time.
There you go.
Which makes Grace feel wow.
Good evening, it's Friday the 5th of April. Welcome to Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet. It's the show where we take all the good and bad bits of the news and dissect them for your entertainment. Tonight we'll be speaking to our panel here in the studio, and later on we'll be getting a culture fix with Radhika Seth, who'll be reviewing the latest TV and film releases. But first, the headlines. Party support after Conservative MP William Ragg says he gave away MP's data in an online sting. Tonight, a second MP confirms he was also targeted. A grave mistake. Several senior Israeli officers are sacked over the mistaken airstrike which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza. The court hears how a key witness who's given crucial evidence in the Madeleine McCann investigation is dying from cancer. Consultants in England accept a fresh pay offer from the government, ending a year-long dispute. And New York gets the jitters as a rare earthquake hits the city. Coming up, I'll be joined once more by our panel, the DJ and writer Dave Haslam and the actor and impressionist Jan Ravens will be here with me with our regular feature, Good Week, Bad Week. Find out why it's been a good week indeed for glam rock royalty Kiss. Well, certainly for their bank, I'm not going to pull out my tongue, by the way. Certainly for their bank managers, if not their fans. But it has been a week to forget for Jonathan Ross after the chat show host kicked up a bit of a stink over his personal hygiene habits, or lack of. Great to have your company. We're here for the next 3 hours. Hold on tight. It is Friday night. Good evening, good to have you with us. Now, there are no plans to discipline the Conservative MP William Ragg after he admitted handing over the personal phone numbers of fellow MPs and Westminster staff to a man he met on the dating app Grindr. This evening, a second MP has come forward to say he was also targeted in a similar attack. Meanwhile, Mr Ragg has apologised and said he is mortified, and many fellow parliamentarians have expressed their sympathy for him, although the matter has raised questions about security as well as MPs' behaviour. Here's our political correspondent, Matthew Thompson.
William Ragg, I have a cheerful question that I know.
A senior Conservative backbencher, William Ragg finds himself at the centre of a sex scam that has rocked Parliament. He's admitted handing over personal contacts of fellow MPs to a man he met on a dating app. He told The Times, "They had compromising things on me. They wouldn't leave me alone. They would ask for people. I gave them some numbers, not all of them. I told him to stop. He's manipulated me, and now I've hurt other people." So far, though, Mr Ragg has received support and sympathy from his party.
Well, I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology. But the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cybersecurity.
Though a few of his constituents were less forgiving.
They're all a bunch of children. They all behave as badly as each other. They don't know how to conduct themselves as adults.
I'm appalled at what he's done. I'm even more appalled the fact that he gave the phone numbers of other MPs.
And MPs are given plenty of advice on such matters. This extract from a National Cybersecurity Centre briefing for MPs talks specifically about messaging apps. Consider the recipient, it says. Are they who they say they are? And it warns MPs to avoid accepting message requests from unknown accounts. Training, though, isn't mandatory, and some now think that it should be. But I spoke to one MP who was targeted by this scam, who told me it was so obviously a scam that they deleted it immediately. They said it was extraordinary that anybody had replied at all. Another MP, Conservative Luke Evans, has just come forward as a victim of the attack. He went straight to police.
I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the Chief Whip.
One former police officer, once in charge of MPs' protection, said that was the way to handle it.
One would like to think there's some common sense and some intelligence being practiced around personal behaviour. I think what it will do is I imagine the kind of ears will prick up across some of our adversaries, shall we say, to recognise that actually this is a technique that our MPs are vulnerable to.
And there's the problem. Even if the impact of this latest scandal can be contained, It's highlighted a weakness that can be exploited. Next time, it could be worse. Matthew Thompson, Sky News, Westminster.
Next, Israel's military has said its attack, which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, was a grave mistake. 3 of those killed were former British servicemen there to protect the people on a humanitarian effort. Several senior officers have been dismissed, and the military in Israel has acknowledged there was a series of failures which resulted in the convoy being targeted. The incident is, of course, raising questions over how many other times such a low threshold for lethal force has been used in the 6 months of the conflict. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
This should never have happened. The call to strike the first aid vehicle was a case of mistaken identity, the IDF has said. The drone pilot thought he saw a Hamas gunman getting into the World Central Kitchen car. He was wrong. The decision to then take out the second and the third vehicles was a grave mistake.
This incident is a true tragedy, something that should have never happened. There was incorrect identification, decision making errors, and non-compliance with the standard operating procedures.
The investigation found that gunmen, presumed to be Hamas, arrived at the aid warehouse and one fired into the air to keep crowds away. However, none of them had travelled with World Central Kitchen in their vehicles. Seeing this, there were attempts made to reach the aid team on the ground to find out what was going on. This failed, and the charity branding on the roof of one of the cars wasn't visible to the drone pilots at night. Today, the IDF fired 2 officers and reprimanded senior commanders. No decision has been made yet on criminal charges. World Central Kitchen has described the Israeli apology as cold comfort, and the UN Secretary-General blamed IDF discipline.
The essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again.
A former Israeli general told us that this had been an isolated incident in months of fierce fighting.
Obviously, there was a terrible mistake that once done was followed up by more mistakes. You believe that this is a terrorist car, and the people who will come out from the terrorist car are terrorists, and then you follow them, and that's you keep making the same mistake.
The Israeli military says it does not deliberately target aid workers. Almost 200 are said to have been killed during the war, though, as well as thousands of Palestinian civilians.
These findings raise serious questions about the IDF's rules of engagement. The only reason that there was an investigation and the results are made public is because of the international outrage following the deaths of foreign aid workers. And so, how many other cases of mistaken identity have there been in 6 months of war in Gaza that have not been the subject of investigation?
Israel had insisted it couldn't reopen the Erez crossing into northern Gaza for aid after it was destroyed by Hamas on October the 7th. But under severe pressure following the attack on the aid convoy, it has said it will now be a new route for aid into Gaza, and Ashdod port will be able to receive ships. It's a very significant development and is expected to happen within days.
The real test is results, and that's what we're looking to see in the coming days and in the coming weeks. Is the aid effectively reaching people who need it?
Israel will hope that by letting more aid into Gaza, they will alleviate the pressure being put on them by Washington and others. Washington will hope that more aid into Gaza will alleviate the humanitarian crisis, and then the security conditions on the ground will improve. The killing of the 7 aid workers has proven to be another inflection point in this war. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Tel Aviv.
Well, we've now learned a lot more about the moments leading up to the attack on the aid convoy and the drone strike that took place. Here's Sky's Ashna Haranag.
A string of errors that led to the killing of 7 aid workers has drawn outrage across the world. This is what the IDF says happened on Monday, the 1st of April. A map they have provided us shows at 10 p.m, 8 lorries of aid from the World Central Kitchen move from their pier to a warehouse in Deir al-Balah. The aid workers are following in 3 vehicles, travelling south down this coastal road in Gaza. The IDF claims at 28 minutes past 10, a drone operator spots an armed individual on top of one of the lorries. He's seen opening fire, it's thought, to keep a crowd back. The convoy continues to the hangar, where they drop off 100 tons of aid. It's at this point the group splits. One vehicle heads north, carrying men believed to be armed. The 3 cars carrying the aid workers head south, back to the coastal road. It's here when the IDF says a drone operator mistakenly believes one of the passengers is carrying a weapon. The first missile hits at 11:09 p.m. 2 passengers are seen running out. At 11:11, a second missile is launched without additional order to strike. It hits the second vehicle and pierces through the charity's logo on top of the car. The IDF calls this a grave mistake. Some of the passengers are still alive and they run towards the third vehicle. 2 minutes later, the IDF says a third and final strike hits the remaining car and all 7 aid workers are killed. The vehicles were travelling through a deconflicted zone. Sky News analysis has verified where the vehicles were in the aftermath of the attack, here highlighted in yellow. These are different and further apart compared to where the IDF says the strikes took place. These are still so many unanswered questions, though, including who was travelling in which car and why they fired on vehicles that didn't contain the suspected armed person. The IDF says they are responsible for the deaths, which include 3 British nationals. The United States, Israel's biggest ally, says they need to proactively protect and aid civilians or risk a change in US policy. These are the new routes that Israel has agreed to open. Shipments will now be allowed to come in via the port of Ashdod and enter Gaza through Karim Shalom and Erez crossings, all of which have been closed since October the 7th. Movement that's all been prompted by events this week. But when they'll be open and how long for, we're yet to know.
Got some breaking news for you now on our top story. The MP's honey trap sexting scam. The Metropolitan Police have now confirmed that they are investigating what's happened. A statement from the Met says officers from the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command are carrying out an investigation following reports that a number of unsolicited messages were sent to MPs over recent months. They go on saying we are working closely with other forces and are in contact with colleagues in parliamentary security who are providing support and advice around anyone affected. So that top story this evening, following on from William Ragg MP saying he was weak into being fooled into giving away the numbers of some fellow MPs and other people working in Westminster. Well, the Metropolitan Police are now investigating as their Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command looking into what's happened in that honey trap sexting scam. Moving on, and it's been revealed a key witness in the Madeleine McCann investigation is terminally ill with cancer. It comes as Christian B., the main suspect, is in court charged with unrelated sex crimes. From Germany, here's our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt.
The witness didn't want to add to his official evidence, but apart from cutting a striking figure in court, Michael Tarchel had certainly dropped a bombshell. And it may just have helped the man in the dock, his former pal Christian B., on trial for sex crimes. What the witness said could set back the investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Mr. Tarchel told the court that another witness in this trial, a friend and a man who is central to the Madeleine McCann investigation, was dying from cancer and may not have long to live.
He said she didn't scream.
He was talking about this man, Helga Bushing, the informant who triggered investigators' suspicions about Christian B. over Madeleine. 7 years ago, he told British police that Christian B. had confessed to him. He'd confided about Madeleine. She didn't cry when I took her. Ever since then, police have been trying to find conclusive clues, but all they have is circumstantial evidence. Christian B. is a convicted child sex offender. He lived close to the holiday apartment where Madeleine vanished. Mobile phone data put him near the apartment at the time. He changed the registration of his car the next day, but none of his vehicles has provided any forensic evidence of Madeleine. Mr. Bushing gave evidence in the current trial this week, but he may not be around if Christian B is ever charged in the Madeleine case. Mr. Tarchell was friends with Christian B 20 years ago, he said in court. He told me how he earned money and that he burgled tourists' houses at night and would even break in when they were sleeping, he said. He broke in once, naked, and a teenage girl woke up and screamed. At Christian B's house, he said, there were sex toys scattered around and stolen property hidden away. Christian B boasted how he used a post to tie up a teenage girl. The sex crimes trial may not finish until the autumn. Another potential trial here in the Madeleine case could now be much longer away. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Braunschweig, Germany.
Also making the news this evening, consultants in England have accepted a pay deal offered by the government, ending a year-long dispute which led to unprecedented strike action. 83% of senior doctors voted in favour of the proposal put forward by the British Medical Association. A strike by border force staff at Heathrow has been called off. They threatened to walk out for 4 consecutive days next week in a dispute over working patterns. But 4 days of severe rail disruption are underway as train drivers continue their long-running strike. There was no service on the West Coast main line today, while drivers will also walk out tomorrow and Monday in other areas in a dispute over pay, which has lasted now nearly 2 years. And Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher have announced that they are getting divorced. In a statement, they said they have been quietly working through this change. Earlier this month, the actor Rebel Wilson accused Mr. Baron Cohen of inappropriate behaviour, a claim that he denied. We're going to cross live to Baltimore now, where President Biden is about to speak. But first, this is the governor of Maryland who's talking. Let's listen in.
But the people of Maryland, we rallied. And I tell you, Mr. President, the city of Baltimore is stronger today than ever before. But our strength is not preordained. Marylanders have spent weeks, months, and years focusing on what unites us. Baltimore came together to improve public safety, and last year, we brought down homicides to the lowest rates that they have been in almost a decade. Baltimore came together to drive growth, and this year, we have one of the fastest growing economies in the nation. The hardworking people of Baltimore have been training for this moment, even if we didn't know it. Our unions, our first responders, our government leaders, our village elders, our business community, all of us have forged uncommon bonds, and partnership is what we do here. And partnership will help us to rebuild the bridge and win this moment. Today, we launch a new partnership with leaders in the public and the private sectors. It is called the Maryland Tough, Baltimore Strong Alliance. The alliance is made up of leaders who are doubling down on their commitment to the city and their commitment to this state. Many have agreed to not lay off employees. Many have agreed to return to Baltimore even if they need to move somewhere else temporarily. And all have agreed to help us build a better future. Foundations, businesses, sports teams, community champions have committed a combined $15 million thus far to support our workers and our neighbors in this moment.
I've got a feeling that's President Biden's sleeve you can see on the right of the shot there, but the governor is talking at length. So we're going to just leave that for now. We'll bring you what President Biden says later on. But you're watching Friday Night on Sky News. Coming up, more from our news reviewers, Dave Haslam and Jan Ravens. And we'll be chatting about why it's been a good week for rock gods Kiss, who reached a deal to make sure their songs live on forever. Also why it's been a very bad week for anyone trying to pass through Euston railway station like Dave.
It's one of the most dramatic sights in nature. A total solar eclipse, when day turns to night in a rare and spectacular sight. Join millions of people across Mexico, the US and Canada and watch the total eclipse live in a special programme on Sky News.
So we live on a double-decker bus, and we predominantly use solar panels to power everything that needs electricity in the bus. So we don't have an electric bill, we don't have a gas bill for our cooking, and that money we're now saving to buy some land to do something different with. You don't need pure sunshine to get solar panel onto the bus, so even when it's overcast, you do still take on power. Again, it comes down to how much battery power you have to store the energy that you've obviously took in. And obviously, the more power you have banked, obviously, the longer that will last.
So we moved on in, what year was it?
22.
22? Yeah, we've been on it over a year now. It wasn't a costly thing. We managed to buy the bus and convert it for under 10 grand. We felt quite lucky that we found some refurbished house solar panels. So that's what we've got on the roof, isn't it?
Yes, I think our whole solar system cost us under £500. That was including wiring, the solar panels and the controller and batteries. No, so we move around every 2 days. It goes wherever we go. So we've got a lot of festivals this year. So we're going to be touring the UK, doing a lot of festivals up and down the country, which will be really fun. Yeah, so we've got the generator if we really need it. But in the year and a half that we've been on...
States of America.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. We're going to head back to Baltimore now. As you can see, President Biden is now about to speak in the shadow of the river where the Key Bridge collapsed some 10 days ago now.
Please, thank you. By the way, folks, I say to my dad, they're mispronouncing Balmer. My dad and the Biden, please sit down. The Biden family goes all the way back to being watermen in this bay for a long, long time, back in the mid-1800s. And my father was born and raised here in Baltimore. And there's a strong, strong connection. Still have family in the region as well. Governor Moore, Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Fumey, Mayor Scott, County Executive Johnny O. I like that. Johnny O, ho, ho. To all the military members and first responders, and most importantly, the people of Maryland, I'm here to say your nation has your back, and I mean it. Your nation has your back. And you've got, without exaggeration, one of the finest delegations in the Congress of any state in the Union, and they know how to get things done, and we're going to get this paid for, aren't we? Yes. All right. I was just briefed by the Unified Command about the ongoing impact of this tragic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge last Tuesday. The damage is devastating, and our hearts are still breaking. Eight construction workers went into the water when the bridge fell. 6 lost their lives. Most were immigrants, but all were Marylanders. Hard-working, strong, and selfless. After pulling a night shift fixing potholes, they were on a break when the ship struck. Just seconds before, one of the men, named Carlos, who was only 24, left a message for his girlfriend. Here's what it said. "We just poured cement. We're waiting for it to dry," he said. Well, to all the families and loved ones who are grieving, I've come here to grieve with you. We all are. It's not the same, but I know a little bit about what it's like to lose a piece of your soul, to get that phone call in the middle of the night to say family members are gone. I've been there. It's feeling like having a black hole in your chest, like you're being sucked in, unable to breathe. The anger, the pain, the depth of the loss is so profound. And we know it's hard to believe, and you're probably not going to believe me, but I can tell you now from personal experience, the day is going to come
When the memory of your loved one as you walk by that park or the church or something that you shared together is going to bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eye. It's going to happen. It's going to take a while, but I promise you it will happen. And that's when you know you're going to be able to make it. I promise you it will come. Our prayers for you is that time comes sooner rather than later, but it will come. Also, never forget the contributions these men made to this city. We're going to keep working hard to recover each of them. And you know, my vow is that we will not rest, as Carlos said, until the cement has dried and the entirety of a new bridge. A new bridge. Earlier this afternoon, we took an aerial tour and survey of the wreckage. You know, from the air, I saw the bridge that's been ripped apart. But here on the ground, I see a community that's been pulled together. I want to thank you all, the first responders, the port workers, state and local officials, who sprang into action before dawn, who've been here ever since. And we did talk, I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. You were out here. You were here. Within minutes of the collapse, the U.S. Coast Guard arrived on the scene. Within hours, I ordered personnel from the Army Corps of Engineers, the Navy, the Department of Transportation to assist in every way possible. Within a day, we stood up a unified command. In the weeks to come, I want you to know we're going to continue to have your backs every step of the way. I guarantee you. I guarantee it. First is our priority to reopen the port. This is one of the nation's largest shipping hubs. And it's the top port in America, both in importing and exporting of cars and light trucks, the #1. Simply put, the impact here has a significant impact everywhere, up and down the coast and around the country. Thousands of tons of mangled steel remain lodged in the water, blocking ships from moving in and out of the harbor. I've directed the Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Army Corps of Engineers, who are, by the way, the finest engineers in the world, and the state officials to work together to help remove this steel as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. So far, our team has been able to clear 2 small channels for essential ships, helping clear the wreckage. And yesterday, the Army Corps announced that by the end of April, they'll be able to open the 3rd channel for some commercial traffic, including car carriers. And by the end of May, we'll open the full channel, the full channel. My task force on supply chain disruption has been engaging with union, rail, trucking, shipping, state and local leaders to minimize the impact on our supply chains. And I'm proud to announce that the federal government will provide over $8 million in grant funds to make the infrastructure improvements at Sparrows Point as the only port unaffected by this collapse, which will allow Sparrows Point to take on more ships. And that's happening now, will happen shortly. Second, we're focused on protecting the workers and businesses. Folks, 20,000 jobs depend on this port. 20,000 families depend on this port to buy groceries, to make rent, to pay their bills. Today, my administration is announcing the first tranche of dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes, all it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers involved in the cleanup of this incident, additional jobs. My Small Business Administration has also issued a disaster declaration, which will allow the SBA to offer low-interest loans for small businesses impacted by the collapse in order to keep things moving. The state, the city, the county are also stepping up in impressive ways to help workers and businesses who have been affected by this disaster. But folks, we all need to step up. Amazon, Home Depot, Domino Sugar, and many other companies all rely on this port. And they have committed to keep workers and payrolls on their businesses in Baltimore and move as quickly and clearly as possible to change the channel. I'm calling on every company at and around the port to do the same thing, the same exact thing, commit to stay. And the customers who use this port, we're coming back. We're coming back soon. Folks, finally, we're going to move heaven and earth to rebuild this bridge as rapidly as humanly possible. And we're going to do so with union labor and American steel. for a simple reason. They're the best workers in the world, and that's not hyperbole. Every day, over 30,000 vehicles traveled across this bridge. And I was one of those people. I commuted every day from Delaware for 36 years to Washington, D.C., back and forth, and about 1/4 of that time by automobile. I've been to every part of this port. Folks, we now face a question no American should ever have to ask. How will I get to work? How will I go to school? How will I get to a hospital? Response, everyone, including Congress, should be asking only one question, and they're going to be asked a question by your delegation. How can we help? How can we solve that problem? My administration is committed, absolutely committed, to ensuring that the parties responsible for this tragedy pay to repair the damage and be held accountable to the fullest extent the law will allow. But I also want to be clear. We will support Maryland and Baltimore every step of the way to help you rebuild and maintain all the business and commerce that's here now. As the governor can tell you, within hours of the Maryland request, we approved $60 million in emergency federal funding. I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it. As we've done in other parts of the country in similar circumstances. When I stand here, I call on Congress to authorize this effort as soon as possible. Let me close with this. This port is over 300 years old. As a matter of fact, as I said, my great-great-grandfather worked here as a waterman in this bay. This port is older than our republic, and it's been through tough times before. During the War of 1812, a young mariner named Francis Scott Key, to whom the bridge was named after, sat in a boat in this very harbor, and he watched the British troops launch an attack after attack on American forces. But as the dawn broke, we saw the American flag still flying. Baltimore was still standing, and our nation, as he rode in the Star-Spangled Banner, had made it through a perilous fight. Folks, this is going to take time. But Governor Moore, Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Fumey, Mayor Scott, County Executive Johnny O, and others are going to rebuild this bridge as rapidly as possible. And folks, we're determined to come back even stronger. We're the only nation that's gone through every crisis that we've had. We come out stronger than we went in, and we're going to do it here as well. And once more, to make this perilous challenge. You know, because we're the United States of America, there's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. Think about that. Remember who we are. We're the United States of America. Nothing is beyond our capacity. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops, our first responders, and all those who gave their soul. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent Mark Stone now, who's in Washington. Mark, some rousing words there from the president, and kind of a reminder that it is an election year as well, from what he said there.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, Matt. Exactly. It's very clear there were echoes of an election speech there. This, I suppose, oddly, will be seen by some as an opportunity for President Biden, an opportunity for him to point out that he, as president, has passed extraordinary bipartisan infrastructure bills in the first part of his presidency, which will address America's massive problem with aging infrastructure that was so clearly, so viscerally demonstrated by the collapse of the Key Bridge in Baltimore 10 days ago. A collapse caused, yes, by a massive cargo ship, but one that was a disaster that was made worse because of the state of the bridge, because of the age of the bridge, and because it didn't have the protection needed to counter these massive ships which now use this port and so many others across the country. And so, yes, in a way, this was an election speech. He was able to bring in some catchphrases that we've heard him use many times in the past about this being the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity. It's also helpful to him that the man standing to his left, Wes Moore, the new governor of Maryland is a Democrat, is a fan of Joe Biden, and is somebody who clearly would like to see the president elected again. What, of course, this does do too is highlight massive problems with America's infrastructure. We've been to a bridge just 20 miles away from that, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, which is classed as fracture critical, a dual bridge. We've seen the state it's in. There is real focus now on so many other bridges across the country, and we'll bring you our special report on that other bridge just 20 miles away later on this evening.
Mark Stone in Washington, D.C. for us this evening. Thanks very much indeed. Well, continuing our review of the week's news minutes, at this point we ask who had a good week, who had a bad one. The weekend is here, so who has relieved it's all over, who finished a winner. I'm joined by a pair of winners, in fact, DJ journalist and author Dave Haslam and the actor and impressionist Jan Ravens, Dave and the Rave. The first good thing I think that may be happening. It's all going on, isn't it? Because we're talking, well, we've got Dave's pet subject because we're talking music venues, Dave. You think it's been a good week for small ones in particular? Yeah, well, the Culture, Media and Sport Committee have been looking at a proposal to set a levy, a £1 levy on tickets sold in arenas and other big venues. Because the small venues, the small grassroots venues, which are such an important part of the ecosystem of our music, are facing really difficult times. So the idea is that the big players in the industry pay towards helping to fund the small venues because they're under so much pressure. I mean, economic pressure, mostly. And because, you know, it's like a talent pipeline. If you talk about 95% of the bands that will play those big arenas started off in small venues. Now, if the small venues close, then the creativity of our music scene will wither away. And they're important for towns and cities. They're absolutely part of our identity. They're part of what we expect when we live in a city. What would Manchester have been without the Hacienda? And this is sort of enforced trickle-down economics, isn't it? Sometimes you think a big venue's going to help just by being there. Well, it doesn't always work. But having this kind of levy, you think it's going to keep the whole ecosystem thriving, do you think, Jan?
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, I wonder if it could happen like, you know, with, you know, that the Royal Opera House would give, you know, little fringe theatres £1 or £2 or something like that, because it sounds like such a sort of sensible idea. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, it's like the Premier League, they give millions, probably not as much as they should, but they give millions to non-league football, you know, all the non-league clubs benefit from the football. It's that kind of a trickle. Well, there is a big argument with the Premier League at the moment, in that they're not giving more, and the teams lower down the pyramid would like them to do. But I believe it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. Yeah. The wind is blowing in the right direction on that. It's just the practicalities of how they're going to do that. And I think, you know, given that a lot of people who go to those big concerts are paying £4 or £5 for a booking fee, I don't think they're going to mind paying £1 to keep their local music scene alive. If they see the benefit. Look, I would like to suggest that it's been a good week for the rock band Kiss. Now, they have sold their back catalogue to the company behind ABBA's hologram concerts for a reported £230 million. I wonder if they'd have done it if the ABBA hologram thing hadn't worked, hadn't been a success. But we see more bands doing this kind of thing. We saw David Bowie selling off his rights. I think Springsteen has done similar. I think Bob Dylan has done this kind of thing as well. Now Kiss are in on the act. The thing about Kiss is, because they're so visual, OK, you're wincing a bit, Jan. Not a Kiss fan? Well, I'm not a Kiss fan, and I couldn't name you a Kiss song, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, that's all I know of Kiss.
God Gave Rock and Roll to You.
Oh, OK. Yeah.
Is probably their biggest one.
Karaoke favourite.
Yeah,
which is Dave's karaoke favourite.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing Thank You for the Music by ABBA. I'll do that. No, they're not my favourites. But are they going to make a hologram show of them then, do you think?
They might do. I mean, it would be quite visual. I mean, that might be it, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Jan, I know you do think, though, it's been a bad week for Jonathan Ross. Explain.
Well, it's been specifically, Matt, it's been a bad week for anybody who's on Jonathan Ross's show, because Jonathan Ross has revealed this week on a podcast called Parenting Hell with Josh Whittingham that he doesn't shower more than once a week. I mean, sometimes more than that, he'll go. And he says, and his wife, Jane, the same. And he says, in our bed, we're like a pair of little hamsters in the straw.
You know, so he's very sort of open about it, and he thinks showering is very overrated. And apparently once went over 2 weeks when they were on holiday in Florida because he said he was in and out of the water all the time. Why would he bother having a shower? Now, some dermatologists have come out and said, you know, there is some kind
truth in this.
Some truth and some sort of, you know, good sense in this, and that we are all overwashing.
We're too clean.
Since we've all got showers, we're all dehydrating our skin.
What about his private parts?
Well, I'm very glad you asked me that, Dave.
I mean, Jan's already done her private parts thing this evening. Can we not go there again?
No, I'm not going to say anything like that again. But it does say several points in this article that I read about this in The Independent. It says, well, we've consulted this dermatological expert who says that, you know, you shouldn't shower, you know, that often. And the only bits that you need to wash are face, armpits and groin. And which is a nice word, isn't it?
Yes.
And because they're the only places, the armpits and the groin, which they keep repeating, are the only places where odour is secreted.
Yes.
So they're the bits you need to pay attention to. So, or face, feet and fanny, as my mum used to say.
God, I just knew Jan was going to take us.
Yeah, just take us right down there.
Take us down that filthy road. Oh, we're just going to finish off, Dave. A bad week for Euston Railway Station in London. You just don't like it.
Well, it's overcrowded. I mean, they updated what's it called, the screens, you know, with the train times. The display thing, and it's all singing and all dancing. And people are left on the concourse there for hours waiting for trains back up north. And also getting to Euston, trains stopping halfway. And, I mean, for me, it's an example of how our infrastructure, we're just hearing about America's infrastructure falling apart. I mean, we need serious investment and renationalisation.
We could be here all evening if we talk about that, but we'll leave it there for now. Although imagine you're at Euston, it's rammed, and you're stood next to Jonathan Ross after 2 weeks of rush hour. You couldn't wait to get on that train. Dave, Jan, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us. Now, the Met Police have announced today they're investigating a so-called Westminster honey trap plot. It was reported that MPs and their staff were being targeted with WhatsApp messages that included explicit images. Then last night, the story developed further when the Conservative MP William Ragg admitted to The Times that he'd shared other MPs' personal phone numbers with someone he met on a dating app because they had some compromising material on him. To discuss what appears to be a targeted attack on MPs, we're joined now by Sarah Southern, political aide to David Cameron when he was Prime Minister. Sarah, thanks for joining us here on Friday night. What's your initial reaction to all this stuff going on? Because I think those of us who are outside the sort of Westminster bubble think, how on earth could this kind of thing really happen?
It's not that surprising, I think, that it's happened, as obviously people are going to try any way possible to get access or try and manipulate people in power, that's for sure. I do feel slightly sorry for William Ragg. He's obviously made a grave mistake in sharing other people's numbers, but it's not unusual for people in their early 30s, like William Ragg is, to be on dating sites and to perhaps get a little friendly with someone, but it is unfortunate that he went to the point of sharing other people's telephone numbers. But I understand, obviously, that other MPs have been targeted just by messages of people claiming that they've met them, claiming that they know each other. And I can perhaps understand, you know, out of perhaps politeness of people within Westminster, that they respond embarrassed to think that they can't remember who someone is. But it's not an ideal situation, and I think has really opened the door to show that a lot of MPs have perhaps been quite naive in their behaviour.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Sarah. Plenty of people, 20s, 30s, older, go on dating apps and they share stuff maybe they shouldn't have, but they're not politicians, and they're not then compromised and basically hoodwinked into sharing other people's details. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people in the electorate, and we've got a general election coming up at some point this year or very, very early next, will wonder, what were they thinking?
Well, it's not the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last. I'm sure you remember about 10 years ago, a journalist pretended to be a a young lover, as it were, or a potential young lover to the MP Brooks Newmark, and got to send some snaps to her, even though it was actually a male journalist. That was, I think, about 10 years ago. It's not the first time this has happened. I fear it won't be the last. And I think it is a real lesson to people, not just MPs, but anyone within Westminster, journalists, activists, or indeed staffers alike, that there will be people out there trying to get access to information. And it's, you know, as many security systems that can be put in place by the government, it's not going to stop, unfortunately, mistakes made by human beings.
Sarah, I know when you were working for David Cameron, the politicians had encrypted BlackBerries, devices like that. Do you think it's got too far that a lot of governing is just being done on WhatsApp? Is that a part of this?
I think there's definitely such a more informal nature of the way things happen. I mean, we've certainly seen through the COVID inquiry the amount of WhatsApp messages that took place between the Cabinet and indeed amongst the Scottish and Welsh governments as well. It is a really swift and quick way of communicating. And of course, something like WhatsApp is encrypted. But it's not encrypted once someone takes a screenshot of that, or it's sent on to someone else, or the wrong number is added to a WhatsApp group. There are lots of human errors that can happen that can stop quite a safe system becoming totally inept.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. Where do you think this is going to go, Sarah? I mean, you know, like you say, a lot of sympathy towards William Ragg. We know that others have been pulled into this as well. I mean, Dave, who's my panellist this evening, being a bit more on the cynical side, that, well, William Ragg had already announced he's not running at the next election, hence that's why the Conservatives are not withdrawing the whip in punishment for this. Do you think there's much in that?
No, I don't actually. I think it would be a bit unkind to punish him for that, as at the end of the day it does seem as though he has been blackmailed, and I don't think we should be in a position where we're effectively victim shaming people. You know, he's made a mistake. He probably went into those conversations in all good nature as he met them on a dating app, but I think a few more people will probably come out. I understand that someone else this evening has come out to say that they were targeted and they reported it to the police. I think we'll hear other instances. And, you know, there could be some instances where perhaps a more junior member of staff was targeted and it didn't end well for them. So I think we will probably find out some more stories, and I think we will perhaps see the parliamentary authorities send out an email to all MPs reminding them that they need to be cautious in what they're communicating to people.
Sarah, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Still with me tonight, Dave Haslam and Jan Ravens. Jan, what do you think about it all? Because, you know, in recent weeks, we've had the government talking about the threat from China, OK? And prior to that was discussion around not having Chinese equipment in our 5G infrastructure and all this kind of thing. And then suddenly something like this happens, and people will start to join the dots and come to their own conclusions, probably incorrectly, but even so, it's concerning when you think about it in those terms.
Well, it's concerning, although I sort of, you know, go back, you know, to what I was saying, where, you know, you can't kind of...
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of ESL.
Welcome to the DHL Sports Hub on Sky News. Coming up, Rory McIlroy seeks advice as he looks to finally win the Masters next week and complete his set of golf major titles. And we join one Chelsea fan as he enjoys his 100th birthday at Stamford Bridge, with his favourite manager also getting involved in the celebrations. But we start with Formula One, and Lewis Hamilton remains optimistic Mercedes can recover from a poor start to the 2024 season ahead of this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. The 7-times world champion was eliminated in Q2 last time out in Melbourne, then forced to retire on lap 17 of the race due to a power unit failure. Hamilton consequently said it had been the worst opening to a campaign he'd had in his career, but believes the team can respond positively.
I think for us, we of course we've not started the season where we wanted to be. We've got a long way to go. You've seen in the past, last year, for example, how things can switch in certain teams. If you look at like Aston or McLaren last year, who started on the back foot and had or the other way around. And so anything can happen in this sport. So I think We've just got to learn as much as we can, take as much as we can from the data, remain positive, continue to work hard, and it's you know, I always say it's not how you fall, it's how you get up. So we're just going to continue to chase and fight, and hope that we can be fighting at the front at some stage.
Hamilton sits just 10th in the early standings, with teammate George Russell 7th after he crashed out late on in Australia. Red Bull and Ferrari occupy the top 4 places, with reigning champion Max Verstappen 4 points clear of Charles Leclerc. Mercedes' poor form follows Hamilton's decision to leave them for Ferrari next year. A contender to replace him could be Sebastian Vettel. He's considering a return to F1 after retiring in 2022, with Hamilton calling him an amazing option. Vettel's already held talks with Toto Wolff as well as other team principals.
I had conversations with him, not really about the seat. We did speak about, you know, the whole situation in short as well, but I did speak to others as well, because I'm still keeping in touch every now and then. Obviously, I retired not to come back, but I retired to retire. So nothing in this regard has changed, but you never know, obviously, for, you know, a lot of things starting to move, because Lewis's move and now the potential of Max maybe, I don't know, pulling off a surprise. You don't know. So I don't know if the odd circumstance starts to happen or starts to open up, cockpit starts to open up, something to consider for sure. It has to be a couple more phone calls and conversations, I guess, to really find out a little bit more. But for sure, it's one of the best cockpits or best seats on the grid. I think performance-wise, Mercedes has a great track record, struggling a little bit in the last years, but then you're still second or third in the constructors. It's not like you're, you know, in racing in no man's land.
Well, it's Carlos Sainz, the driver Hamilton will replace at Ferrari, who's arguably been most impressive so far, and he marked his return to racing after appendix surgery with a commanding win in Australia. That saw him claim a second victory of the season in the Driver of the Day presented by Salesforce. Sainz is 4th in the overall standings, 11 points behind Verstappen, despite missing round 2 in Saudi Arabia. Sainz's teammate Leclerc is the early leader in the DHL Fastest Lap Award, having followed up his win in that competition in Jeddah with another victory down under. His time on lap 56 was a 10th of a second quicker than Lando Norris. But one front where Ferrari aren't in the ascendancy for the moment is the DHL Fastest Pit Stop Award. Sergio Perez managed 2.1 seconds at Albert Park, so Red Bull now lead the Scuderia by 28 points in those standings. To golf, Rory McIlroy has turned to Tiger Woods' former coach Butch Harmon in a bid to bring his near-decade-long wait for a 5th major title to an end. Ahead of next week's Masters, the only one McIlroy is yet to win. He's looking to improve on 2 missed cuts in the last 3 years at Augusta.
I met Butch when I was 14 years old, so we've always had a good relationship, and if there's one guy that I want to go and get a second opinion from, it's him. After the Players, I just thought to myself, I'm obviously missing something here, and I just would love to go and get a second opinion and have him take a look. The one thing with Butch is you go spend time with him, and you're always going to feel better about yourself at the end of it, whether you're hitting it better or not. So, you know, he's sort of half golf coach, half psychologist in a way.
There'll be a number of debutantes at Augusta this year, including the world number 9, Ludwig Aubert. The Swede only made his professional debut last June, but has since had 2 tournament wins and is now preparing to play at a major for the first time, having recently been 8th at the Players' Championship.
A lot of excitement. It's definitely going to be nerve-wracking. It's definitely going to be nervous. But you know, the Masters is the Masters. We all know that, and it's a tournament that I've watched ever since I started playing golf and all these things from when I grew up. But it'll be nervous as any other tournament basically, but obviously my first major is going to be really special. I'll have a close family, I'll have my girlfriend, I'll have some friends over as well, so I think we're all going to enjoy it and just have a good week.
Now, it's been a season to forget for many Chelsea fans as their team has struggled to challenge in the Premier League once again. But one supporter had a day to remember as he celebrated his 100th birthday at Stamford Bridge. It was the first time Alf Wells had been to the stadium since before the Second World War. His favourite ever manager joined him for the celebrations.
It's very nice. I've enjoyed myself. Everybody been marvellous.
As birthday trips go, this was a corker. And why not, when you're 100?
There we are.
Elf's very special day began bright and early with a taxi ride to Newbury Station, accompanied by Wendy, his friend, neighbour and organiser of the birthday treat. His other neighbours were there to greet him. The trip to the bridge was a surprise, but did Elf have any idea of his destination?
Do you know where you're going today?
Well, I've got an idea.
Have you? Where's your idea to?
No, I'm not saying, in case I'm wrong. I've told you it's in my pocket.
Yes, he's written it down in his pocket.
Oh, yes, that's good.
And so to Paddington Station and a taxi ride into West London.
Look at the scarf.
Chelsea. Speaking of Chelsea football.
With a glint in his eye, he reached for that pocket. It looks like it was what he'd wished for.
Do you remember who they're playing today?
Yeah, Burnley.
That's right. That's right.
Then the bridge came into view, Elf's first visit since before the war.
I can't get over it all.
It's a good surprise.
Oh, you're telling me.
Amazing.
Telling me.
Wow.
God. Beautiful.
So this is where the manager sits here for the game.
I can't see her.
Yeah? No, you can't sit there. We've got some nice seats for you. Over there, so you're behind the goal.
He got to meet some Chelsea players he's supported over the years, youngsters compared to Elf. When you came last time, how old were you?
Oh, like 14, I think.
Wow. Wow, and how...
Yeah, just before the war, see? Then the war started and that finished it.
Elf got his picture in the matchday programme, a letter from Captain Rhys James, and a special extra surprise. Who's your favourite manager?
Well, I suppose, what was his name? Wonderful, you know.
Won all the titles, the special one?
Yeah.
Jose?
Suppose that, yeah.
Jose Mourinho?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a special message for you from Jose.
Alf, what an honour to be here wishing you a happy birthday. 100 is absolutely magnificent, and to go to football, to go to your passion, is something incredible.
Yeah.
Many kisses, full of respect.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very nice too.
Not the result he wanted, but a brilliant day nonetheless.
I've seen a few managers here in my time.
Gary Cottrell, Sky Sports.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner.
Formula One has 500 million fans, and Salesforce helps them turn all that data into a single view of each one. Like Grace. Grace is a super fan with a lot of favorites. Formula One can track all that data in real time to give her the perfect fan moment at the perfect time.
There you go.
Which makes Grace feel wow.
Good evening, it's Friday the 5th of April. Welcome to Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet. This is the show when we take all the good and bad bits of the news, dissect them for your entertainment. Tonight we'll be speaking to our panel here in the studio, and later on we'll be getting a culture fix with Radhika Seth, who'll be reviewing the latest TV and film releases. But first, the headlines. Police launched an investigation after Conservative MP William Ragg says he was blackmailed into giving away MP's data. Tonight, a second MP confirms he was also targeted. A grave mistake. Several senior Israeli officers are sacked over the mistaken airstrike which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza. Consultants in England accept a fresh pay offer from the government, ending their year-long dispute. And the grand old lady of New York gets the jitters as a rare earthquake hits the city. Also this hour, Radhika Seth will be here to help you decide what to watch this weekend, although Prince Andrew might choose to avoid the TV following the release of a new Netflix drama, Scoop. Great to have your company. We're here with you until 10 o'clock. Hold on tight. It's Friday night. Good evening. There are no plans to discipline the Conservative MP William Ragg after he admitted handing over the personal phone numbers of fellow MPs and also Westminster staff to a man he met on the dating app Grindr. Tonight, a second MP has come forward to say he was also targeted in a similar attack, and police have confirmed they've launched an investigation. Meanwhile, Mr Ragg has apologised and says he is mortified. And many fellow parliamentarians have expressed sympathy, although the matter has raised questions, important ones, about security as well as MPs' behaviour. Here's our political correspondent, Matthew Thompson.
William Ragg, I have a cheerful question that I know...
A senior Conservative backbencher, William Ragg finds himself at the centre of a sex scam that has rocked Parliament. He's admitted handing over personal contacts of fellow MPs to a man he met on a dating app. He told The Times, "They had compromising things on me. They wouldn't leave me alone. They would ask for people. I gave them some numbers, not all of them. I told him to stop. He's manipulated me, and now I've hurt other people." So far, though, Mr Ragg has received support and sympathy from his party.
Well, I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology, but the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cybersecurity.
Though a few of his constituents were less forgiving.
They're all a bunch of children. They all behave as badly as each other. They don't know how to conduct themselves as adults.
I'm appalled at what he's done. I'm even more appalled the fact that he gave the phone numbers of other MPs.
And MPs are given plenty of advice on such matters. This extract from a National Cybersecurity Centre briefing for MPs talks specifically about messaging apps. Consider the recipient, it says. Are they who they say they are? And it warns MPs to avoid accepting message requests from unknown accounts. Training, though, isn't mandatory, and some now think that it should be. But I spoke to one MP who was targeted by this scam, who told me it was so obviously a scam that they deleted it immediately. They said it was extraordinary that anybody had replied at all. Another MP, Conservative Luke Evans, has just come forward as a victim of the attack. He went straight to police.
I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the Chief Whip.
One former police officer, once in charge of MPs' protection, said that was the way to handle it.
One would like to think there's some common sense and some intelligence being practiced around personal behaviour. I think what it will do is I imagine the kind of ears will prick up across some of our adversaries, shall we say, to recognise that actually this is a technique that our MPs are vulnerable to.
And there's the problem. Even if the impact of this latest scandal can be contained, it's highlighted a weakness that can be exploited. Next time, it could be worse. Matthew Thompson, Sky News, Westminster.
Let's speak to our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh. Good evening, Serena. Since we've been on air, actually, this evening, we now know the Metropolitan Police are investigating. Tell us more.
Yes, there's been concern across Westminster about
how this was allowed to happen, how they got a senior MP to be so compromised, and what information they were trying to extract is still unknown. But yes, tonight the Metropolitan Police said they are investigating all of these unsolicited, explicit messages and sent to MPs in this parliamentary texting scam. Now, they've released a statement. They said officers from the Met Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command are carrying out an investigation following reports a number of messages were sent to MPs over recent months. We're working closely with other forces and are in contact with colleagues in the parliamentary security. Now, earlier Leicester Police said they were also looking into one case. Both forces said they were speaking to the parliamentary security team, and that's all because William Ragg, as you saw there, a senior Tory MP, Select Committee chair, was able to be compromised. Now, most voices in the Conservative Party have been overwhelmingly supportive of William Ragg. There's a sense and a view that he was also a victim himself. This was a coordinated campaign to manipulate and extract sensitive information from him. In fact, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, said he'd given a courageous and fulsome apology, so he won't have the whip removed. It's still unknown, though, who is behind this attacks. What the incident has done, though, is raise concerns about MPs' securities generally and the dangers of these phishing attacks, and how Parliament now can prevent an incident from this happening ever again.
Serena, thanks so much. Next, Israel's military has said its attack, which killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, was a grave mistake. 3 of those killed were former British servicemen there to protect the people on a humanitarian effort. Several senior officers have been dismissed, and the military has acknowledged there was a series of failures which resulted in the convoy being targeted. The incident is now raising serious questions over how many other times such a low threshold for lethal force has been used in the 6 months of the conflict in Gaza. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
This should never have happened. The call to strike the first aid vehicle was a case of mistaken identity, the IDF has said. The drone pilot thought he saw a Hamas gunman getting into the World Central Kitchen car. He was wrong. The decision to then take out the second and the third vehicles was a grave mistake.
This tragic mistake could and should have been prevented. The strike on the aid vehicles is a grave mistake, stemming from serious operational failures, mistaken classification and identification, errors in decision-making, and strikes that were conducted in violation of standard operating procedures.
The investigation found that gunmen, presumed to be Hamas, arrived at the aid warehouse and one fired into the air to keep crowds away. However, none of them had travelled with World Central Kitchen in their vehicles. Seeing this, there were attempts made to reach the aid team on the ground to find out what was going on. This failed, and the charity branding on the roof of one of the cars wasn't visible to the drone pilots at night. Today, the IDF fired 2 officers and reprimanded senior commanders. No decision has been made yet on criminal charges. World Central Kitchen has described the Israeli apology as cold comfort, and the UN Secretary General blamed IDF discipline.
The essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again.
A former Israeli general told us that this had been an isolated incident in months of fierce fighting.
Obviously, there was a terrible mistake that once done was followed up by more mistakes. You believe that this is a terrorist car, and the people who will come out from the terrorist car are terrorists, and then you follow them, and that's you keep making the same mistake.
The Israeli military says it does not deliberately target aid workers. Almost 200 are said to have been killed during the war, though, as well as thousands of Palestinian civilians.
These findings raise serious questions about the IDF's rules of engagement. The only reason that there was an investigation and the results are made public is because of the international outrage following the deaths of foreign aid workers. And so, how many other cases of mistaken identity have there been in 6 months of war in Gaza that have not been the subject of investigation?
Israel had insisted it couldn't reopen the Erez crossing into northern Gaza for aid after it was destroyed by Hamas on October the 7th. But under severe pressure following the attack on the aid convoy, it has said it will now be a new route for aid into Gaza, and Ashdod port will be able to receive ships. It's a very significant development and is expected to happen within days.
The real test is results, and that's what we're looking to see in the coming days and in the coming weeks. Is the aid effectively reaching people who need it?
Israel will hope that by letting more aid into Gaza, they will alleviate the pressure being put on them by Washington and others. Washington will hope that more aid into Gaza will alleviate the humanitarian crisis, and then the security conditions on the ground will improve. The killing of the 7 aid workers has proven to be another inflection point in this war. Alistair Bunker, Sky News in Tel Aviv.
Well, we've now learned a lot more about the moments leading up to that attack on the aid convoy and the drone strike that subsequently took place. Here's Sky's Ashna Haranag.
A string of errors that led to the killing of 7 aid workers has drawn outrage across the world. This is what the IDF says happened on Monday, the 1st of April. A map they have provided us shows at 10 p.m, 8 lorries of aid from the World Central Kitchen move from their pier to a warehouse in Deir al-Bala. The aid workers are following in 3 vehicles, travelling south down this coastal road in Gaza. The IDF claims at 28 minutes past 10, a drone operator spots an armed individual on top of one of the lorries. He's seen opening fire, it's thought, to keep a crowd back. The convoy continues to the hangar, where they drop off 100 tons of aid. It's at this point the group splits. One vehicle heads north, carrying men believed to be armed. The 3 cars carrying the aid workers head south, back to the coastal road. It's here when the IDF says a drone operator mistakenly believes one of the passengers is carrying a weapon. The first missile hits at 11:09 p.m. 2 passengers are seen running out. At 11:11, a second missile is launched without additional order to strike. It hits the second vehicle and pierces through the charity's logo on top of the car. The IDF calls this a grave mistake. Some of the passengers are still alive and they run towards the third vehicle. 2 minutes later, the IDF says a third and final strike hits the remaining car and all 7 aid workers are killed. The vehicles were travelling through a deconflicted zone. Sky News analysis has verified where the vehicles were in the aftermath of the attack, here highlighted in yellow. These are different and further apart compared to where the IDF says the strikes took place. These are still so many unanswered questions, though, including who was travelling in which car and why they fired on vehicles that didn't contain the suspected armed person. The IDF says they are responsible for the deaths, which include 3 British nationals. The United States, Israel's biggest ally, says they need to proactively protect and aid civilians or risk a change in US policy. These are the new routes that Israel has agreed to open. Shipments will now be allowed to come in via the port of Ashdod and enter Gaza through Karim Shalom and Erez crossings, all of which have been closed since October the 7th. Movement that's all been prompted by events this week. But when they'll be open and how long for, we're yet to know.
Next, it's been revealed that a key witness in the Madeleine McCann investigation is terminally ill with cancer. It comes as Christian B., the main suspect, is in court charged with unrelated sex crimes. From Germany, here's our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt.
The witness didn't want to add to his official evidence, but apart from cutting a striking figure in court, Michael Tarchel had certainly dropped a bombshell. And it may just have helped the man in the dock, his former pal Christian B., on trial for sex crimes. What the witness said could set back the investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Mr. Tarchel told the court that another witness in this trial, a friend and a man who is central to the Madeleine McCann investigation, was dying from cancer and may not have long to live.
He said she didn't scream.
He was talking about this man, Helga Bushing, the informant who triggered investigators' suspicions about Christian B. over Madeleine. 7 years ago, he told British police that Christian B. had confessed to him. He'd confided about Madeleine. She didn't cry when I took her. Ever since then, police have been trying to find conclusive clues, but all they have is circumstantial evidence. Christian B is a convicted child sex offender. He lived close to the holiday apartment where Madeleine vanished. Mobile phone data put him near the apartment at the time. He changed the registration of his car the next day, but none of his vehicles has provided any forensic evidence of Madeleine. Mr. Bushing gave evidence in the current trial this week, but he may not be around if Christian B is ever charged in the Madeleine case. Mr. Tarchell was friends with Christian B 20 years ago, he said in court. He told me how he earned money and that he burgled tourists' houses at night and would even break in when they were sleeping, he said. He broke in once, naked, and a teenage girl woke up and screamed. At Christian B's house, he said, there were sex toys scattered around and stolen property hidden away. Christian B boasted how he used a post to tie up a teenage girl. The sex crimes trial may not finish until the autumn. Another potential trial here in the Madeleine case could now be much longer away. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Braunschweig, Germany.
Also making the news this evening, consultants in England have accepted a pay deal offered by the government, ending a year-long dispute which led to an unprecedented strike action. 83% of senior doctors voted in favour of the proposal put forward by the British Medical Association. A strike by Border Force staff at Heathrow has been called off. Staff have threatened to walk out for 4 consecutive days next week in the dispute over working patterns. And Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher have announced they are going to get divorced. In a statement, they said they'd been quietly working through this change. Earlier this month, the actor Rebel Wilson accused Mr. Baron Cohen of inappropriate behaviour, a claim that he denied. You're watching Friday Night on Sky News. Coming up, on the 30th anniversary of his death, we celebrate the legacy of musician Kurt Cobain.
It's one of the most dramatic sights in nature. A total solar eclipse, when day turns to night in a rare and spectacular sight. Join millions of people across Mexico, the US and Canada and watch the total eclipse live in a special programme on Sky News.
So we live on a double-decker bus, and we predominantly use solar panels to power everything that needs electricity in the bus. So we don't have an electric bill, we don't have a gas bill for our cooking, and that money we're now saving to buy some land to do something different with. You don't need pure sunshine to get solar panel onto the bus, so even when it's overcast, you do still take on power. Again, it comes down to how much battery power you have to store the energy that you've obviously took in. And obviously, the more power you have banked, obviously, the longer that will last.
So we moved on in, what year was it?
22.
22? Yeah, we've been on it over a year now. It wasn't a costly thing. We managed to buy the bus and convert it for under 10 grand. We felt quite lucky that we found some refurbished house solar panels. So that's what we've got on the roof, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think our whole solar system cost us under £500. That was including wiring, the solar panels and the controller and batteries. No, so we move around every 2 days. It goes wherever we go. So we've got a lot of festivals this year. So we're going to be touring the UK, doing a lot of festivals up and down the country, which will be really fun. Yeah, so we've got the generator if we really need it. But in the year and a half that we've been on the bus, I can count on 2 fingers the amount of times that we've had issues with power, where we've had to use the generator to top up. Apart from that, we bank enough power from what we pull in to manage everything that we've got.
Welcome back. You're watching Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet, here on Sky News. It is 30 years since the death of one of the most influential musicians in modern music. Kurt Cobain was, of course, singer and guitarist in Nirvana. He took his own life at home in 1994 after his band was credited with pioneering grunge and making it famous, well, everywhere. That takes me back, I'm sure it does you. I'm joined now from Seattle, the city where Kurt Cobain lived at the end of his life, obviously made famous by grunge. And we're joined by Jacob McMurray, Chief Collections Officer at the Museum of Pop Culture. Jacob, thanks for joining us here on Sky News this evening. How do you remember Kurt Cobain?
Well, I think living in Seattle, it's a figure that you really can't, ever forget. I mean, Kurt is really woven into the fabric of Seattle. I mean, I moved here in 1990 and was around during the time that they were exploding, and with long hair and flannel shirts and Doc Martens, and it really is kind of part of the zeitgeist. It really sort of brought the media spotlight to Seattle, and I don't think it's ever changed.
In terms of guitar-based movements, there haven't been that many, right? There's obviously rock and roll. We subsequently have Britpop here in the UK. But grunge is right up there, and Nirvana were really at the heart of it. It must have been an exciting time to be in Seattle when Nirvana were in the ascendancy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about Seattle, I don't think anybody ever thought that anything huge music-wise was going to come out of there. I mean, I think the last band that was big was Heart in the mid-'70s. And so, anybody that wanted to make it big in the music industry sort of left Seattle. And so the fact that, bands that were playing music could craft their own sound and evolve in their own way, I think really led to the explosion that happened with grunge in the early 90s.
And listening back to Nirvana now, look, my own personal favourite Nirvana record is the Unplugged one they did, right? Mm-hmm. And they did covers of the Meat Puppets, and you got much more of Kurt Cobain's melodic influences in there. He's a big Beatles fan, for example. Do you think their music has stood the test of time?
Absolutely. And I think the Unplugged example is a great one. I think that really distills down Nirvana's music into Kurt's amazing songwriting, his beautiful voice. And I think that really was the power, is that they had this sort of Beatles-esque pop songwriting sensibility, but they brought their punk influences, into that mix. And that was just something that wasn't really being heard on mainstream airwaves. And so I do feel like Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, especially because Kurt passed when he was 27 at the height of his, popularity, they've become this sort of, stopping off point for youth in every generation. And I expect that to still happen for decades to come.
Look, it's a macabre observation that he is part of that 27 club, right, which features Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and, plenty of others. Amy Winehouse here in the UK as well. Do you think he was aware in that short time that Nirvana were at the top of their game of his impending legacy? Do you think he knew that they'd really made their mark on the world?
I mean, I think that was something that he struggled with, and in that short amount of time that he was on top of the world. I mean, when, this was a band that only was around 7 years, their idea of success early on was, can we get on an indie label like Touch and Go or SST or something like that? So the idea that they would kind of grow into a band that really, truly would be the most famous band on the planet, I think was something that he really struggled with. It's like he wanted to be true to his, punk rock roots, but you couldn't deny the fact that, he was being foisted into being a voice of a generation. And I think he had a hard time with that.
Jacob, here we are 30 years on since his death. And look, I'm old enough to remember it vividly. And it was a huge shock because he was such a big name at the time and so tragic. And look, he had his troubles with drugs and quite a tempestuous relationship with Courtney Love as well. And of course, left a daughter in Frances. Are people talking about him in Seattle today? Does he still loom large on the Seattle landscape?
He definitely does. I mean, we have an exhibition at the museum called Nirvana Taking Punk to the Masses, which really explores that history and story of Nirvana. And I, love going in there every day and just kind of watching how people are absorbing that information and seeing that story. And to me, while, there is a lot of tragedy to that story, there's a lot of aspiration and inspiration to it as well. This idea that, this guy that didn't come from a lot of opportunity, but with a lot of talent and luck and ambition became the biggest, musician of his generation, I think is something that is really aspirational. That idea that, kids could come into the exhibition and think like, maybe I could play guitar, maybe I could make a zine or put out a record. To me, that's really exciting.
It's really great to see. Look, a lot of Foo Fighters fans will not be aware that their singer and guitarist was the drummer in Nirvana. You could say Foo Fighters perhaps went on to eclipse Nirvana in terms of their scale and their stadium exploits. But the legacy of Nirvana, of Kurt Cobain and obviously Dave Grohl, who's drummer, and Chris Novoselic, it really lives on.
Absolutely, 100%.
Jacob, thank you so much for joining us here on Sky News from Seattle this evening. That's Jacob Murray, Chief Collections Officer at the Museum of Pop Culture. Look, it was a sad day when Kurt Cobain died. He did take his own life, and a reminder that if you're affected by anything that we've discussed in relation to that, you can always call the Samaritans. Their number is 116-123. Details on your screen right now. You can also email joe@samaritans.org. OK, weekend is fast approaching. Let's take a look at the weather. And powerful storm Kathleen is going to bring strong winds to many parts of the UK and Ireland over the weekend. The worst of the weather will be in the west. Back to this evening, though, and we've still got a few showers over Scotland, but most other areas are under a large blanket of cloud right now. The winds are picking up in the southwest. We're seeing some heavy rain over south of Ireland and southwest England. The heavy rain will push northwards during the night, and the strong winds will spread up the west coast. Behind the rain, the skies are clearer with just a few showers in the west. Saturday will be extremely windy. The strongest winds will be around western coast. They could get up to around 70 miles per hour there. And the persistent rain will then clear northwards. It will leave sunshine and showers behind it. It will also feel very warm, particularly in East Anglia. You can see there it's going to be 19 Celsius, potentially the warmest day of the year so far. And some more persistent rain is then expected in southwest England and Wales later on in the day. You are watching Friday Night on Sky News. Coming up in this week's film and TV review.
Everything's changed. The FBI are raiding Epstein's home. You can't stay silent.
We'll discuss the new drama about that interview with Prince Andrew. Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Barbet. Now, the weekend is, of course, here, and with that in mind, we're going to have a look at some of the latest TV and film releases this week, and really place to stay. With me tonight is Radhika Seth, film and culture editor at British Vogue. Good to see you, Radhika. We are going to start with this new show on Netflix that is all about that cringeworthy, infamous interview with Prince Andrew. It's called Scoop.
It's called Scoop. It's a new film, and it's sort of the inside story of what we don't know happened, I guess, in terms of securing that interview. And it's got Gillian Anderson playing Emily Maitlis, Rufus Sewell basically unrecognisable as Prince Andrew, and also Billy Piper playing Sam McAllister, who is the booker who secured that incredible interview. And I will say it's sort of gripping, it's very pacey. I think it's difficult in a way because I think the interview itself is just so bonkers that I think this film has difficulty, I think, kind of comparing, like rivaling it for drama, if that makes sense. But as a reminder of how bonkers that saga was, it's just a really, really entertaining, fascinating watch.
Look, I remember the interview well. I used to work with Emily Maitlis.
Oh my
see
gosh.
Emily being played on screen is very exciting. It's enough to make you sweat, which is, of course, what Prince Andrew doesn't do. Let's have a look at the clip now.
Everything's changed. The FBI are raiding Epstein's home. You can't stay silent. South drawing room, 2 chairs, 6 feet apart.
It's like a Western. Make no mistake, if we don't get the tone right, the story won't be him. It'll be us. Your Royal Highness.
Is it good?
It is good. It's sort of crazy thinking about how it came together. And I think watching it, you were almost worried that it's not going to happen, it's not going to go through. And I think to achieve that, knowing what we know about the whole story, is a real accomplishment.
And I know there is another version of this story coming out on Amazon Prime at some point, which
Yes.
I think is called A Right Royal Scandal or something like that. And that's the one that Emily herself has been more involved with. Is that true?
Exactly, that is
Okay.
true. And so that's why she's less involved with this. And this is more the Sam McAllister story. But I think it'll be great to have these 2 different perspectives on a story where I feel like, yeah, we're never going to know the full story because so much went on behind the scenes of that. So I just, yeah, very excited to see that one as well.
Cannot think of Pizza Express in Woking in the same way ever since that interview 5 years ago. Talking of, well, more than one version, we're going to talk Ripley next, which is a remake of The Talented Mr. Ripley, I understand.
It is. So it's an adaptation of the Patricia Highsmith novel. And of course, that was made very memorably into that film in the late 90s with Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow,
Great
Matt
film.
Damon.
Great movie.
So great. And I think when you think about that as being this sort of like sun-soaked Amalfi Coast set film, it's gorgeous. And I think if people come to this expecting something similar, they're going to be quite surprised. So here's a clip.
Have you decided what you want to see next?
Excuse me?
In Italy.
No. I haven't.
There's a lot to it.
I'm sure there is, but I think I'm going to stay here for a little while.
You know, if you're going to be here longer, Tom, you should stay at my place. I mean, why spend money at the Miramare when I have extra rooms, even if it is just my father's money?
Oh, I'd like that very much.
Great.
Thank you.
The original Talented Miss Ripley is indeed a great film. Anthony Minghella directed it. Jude Law, I think, was nominated for an Oscar for his performance in that one as well. Does this one stand up to comparison?
I think it does, only because it's so different. So as you can see from that, it's really atmospheric, it's moody, it's very, very tense. And I think giving it that space over several episodes to play out, it's just a lot of space for the story to open up. And I think also credit must go to Andrew Scott, who is so wonderful in this role. It's a very different performance to Matt Damon's. It's much more sort of opaque and hidden, and you're not really sure what he's thinking the whole time. And yeah, I think that makes it really, really compelling and definitely a reason for people to watch it.
I don't think there's anything Andrew Scott is in that isn't wonderful, because he's just such a great actor. I mean, Moriarty in Doctor Who Moriarty in Sherlock he was phenomenal in that. He'd probably be brilliant if he was in Doctor Who, to be honest. Let's move on to something that I don't know anything about. Monkey Man, what is it?
So excited to talk to you about this because I just love this film. So this is the directorial debut of Dev Patel.
Okay.
So he stars in the film as well as this kind of young man down on his luck who's on this quest for revenge. And this is like a really kind of bombastic, kind of bonkers action movie. Here's a clip.
I don't want charity. What I need is
It's a job.
This is King's. We just don't hire off the street. Where's your references? Your CV? Hmm? Look, I don't have time for all this. You pass it over.
This. There's my CV. That's bleach. Chemical, oil. Give me the job no one wants to do. I'll do it.
So I am open to this. Yes. I didn't know anything about it, but yes. I do like Dev Patel. He was great in Lion a few years. But I think Lion, where he'd sort of come of age in that film, yes. right? Almost like a leading man kind of level. Yeah, you're agreeing with on,
I agree,
on this.
And I think for this, it's so great to see him step into this like action hero role. I think it's not something he's gotten to do before, and it's great that he, in directing himself, gives himself the opportunity to do this. And it's just a film where it gives you everything that you want. It kind of, there's a bit where it sort of loses its mind in a way, but I completely went with it and I was really, really transported. I mean, it really stretches the limits of believability in parts, I think, but in a way that I was completely there. It was like a roller coaster of a film.
I think we just caught a snippet of a creature that looked like it could be the Monkey Man. Is that the Monkey Man of the title? It looked like it was why is it called Monkey Man?
So he basically does this sort of bare knuckle boxing, and one of his sort of personas is a monkey man. So he wears a monkey mask. Okay. And then when he's on this quest for revenge, that also becomes a sort of disguise and outfit that he wears to go off and basically battle lots of bad guys.
Oh, wow. OK, yeah. Now I know why it's called Monkey Man.
It's, great. Really recommend it.
Also from producer Jordan Peele. Now, that name does ring a bell. Why would that be, Radhika?
So, the director of Get Out, of Us, of Nope, who really also helped bring it to the big screen. So I think at one point it was maybe going to be on streaming. Yeah. But I think Jordan Peele really pushed for it to get this big screen release. And I think it really deserves it. It's a great film to watch with a big crowd of people. I watched it, we were cheering. Like, I think it really needed that. So it's great that it has that platform.
Oh, I'm going to definitely watch that now, Radhika. Thanks for the advice on that.
Amazing.
The final thing we're going to talk about is Yo Capitano. So Monkey Man set in India. Yo Capitano, guessing by the name, is it Italian?
So it begins actually, it's Italian, the title is Italian, but it begins actually in Senegal.
Okay.
So it's based around this teenager who is raised there and has all these big dreams of moving to Europe and becoming a musician. So he sets off on this journey, firstly across the desert and then eventually across the Mediterranean to reach the continent. And it's really a story about people traffickers and the big network that exists and the people that are exploited in the process of that.
Okay.
And I think sometimes, we hear so much talk about small boats, and I think all of that discussion, sometimes it can become a bit dehumanized because you're thinking about it as this sort of faraway thing. And this film just really takes you and puts you right in the middle of a story like that and just asks you, what would you do in that situation, really? So here's a clip.
Il n'y a même pas pour une personne.
Mais manger seulement ça.
Tu as que ça? Tiens, reviens quand t'as le reste.
Mais s'il vous plaît, il faut m'aider. Moi, j'ai seulement ça et mon frère est gravement blessé. Et on doit forcément partir.
Looks an interesting one. Is it good?
It's great. It's really moving, really powerful. And that young actor you saw there, Seydou Sarr, I think he's just a complete newcomer. And he's really extraordinary in this role. I think it takes a lot to lead a film like this. It's from Matteo Garrone, who directed Gomorrah. Maybe you remember, like, about a decade ago.
Yes,
and so,
about the southern Italian mafia, the Camorra, yes, of course.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so the end sort of destination for this character is Naples, which is sort of why sort of the Italian connection makes sense. But a really extraordinary lead performance, and I was really, really impressed. And I'd love to see him in whatever he does next.
It looks like it could be quite hard work, and I'm not saying that because I'm lazy and don't like reading subtitles, far from it, but in terms of the subject matter, and Gomorrah was quite a heavy watch. It spawned a series as well, didn't it, Gomorrah? But it was quite hard work.
I think this is less so because there's these sort of moments of kind of magical realism as well, and also a lot of moments of kind of friendship and camaraderie, and I think that give you really, like, a lot of hope. So it can be grueling in parts, definitely, but also there's a lot there from the young actors that we see that gives you a lot of reason to hope, and, people wanting a better life, and still, despite all these hurdles, keeping on going.
If you had to pick one of our four from Scoop, Ripley, Monkey Man and Yo Capitano, which one would it be?
Very biased, but I would say Monkey Man. I think it really deserves to be seen on a big, big screen.
Monkey Man it is. Radhika, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has appealed for fans of his team and Manchester United to avoid tragedy chanting at Sunday's Premier League match at Old Trafford. Last month's FA Cup meeting was marred by tragedy chanting, resulting in arrests.
Let's just show a bit of class in these moments. So don't do that. Don't sing this or sing that. Just show class. Have a fight on the pitch. Let's play football. Let's, if you want, be happy if we lose or whatever. These kind of things, that's all fine. But besides that, just show a bit of class. That would be really my wish.
Arsenal defender Alexander Zinchenko has said he would leave the UK to fight in Ukraine if called up. His comments came after President Volodymyr Zelensky signed into law a new bill which lowered the military mobilisation age from 27 to 25, boosting the country's armed forces against invading Russian troops. In an interview with the BBC, Zinchenko said he would answer any call-up to go and fight on the front line. England bowler Jofra Archer won't play Test cricket in 2024, according to men's team managing director Rob Key. Archer hasn't played for England since March 2023 due to an elbow injury, but Key says the plan is to have Archer ready for the T20 World Cup, which begins in June. Mercedes boss Toto Wolff says he won't discount four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel as Lewis Hamilton's replacement next year. Hamilton will join Ferrari in 2025, while Vettel retired in 2022.
Sebastian is someone that you can never discount. I think his track record is phenomenal. You know, we want to continue to have these discussions and keep the options open. But at that stage, I think it's much too early for us to commit to a driver, whether very young or whether very experienced.
Meanwhile, on the track, world champion Max Verstappen was quickest in first practice for Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix. The session saw Williams driver Logan Sargent crash into the wall at high speed. But the American, thankfully, was able to walk away from this big impact. It's better news for seven-time champion Lewis Hamilton. Went fifth quickest in what he called his best session of the year. Qualifying begins at 7 a.m. on Saturday. Lionesses are drawing 1-1 against Sweden in their opening Euro 2025 qualifier at Wembley. Alessia Russo scored England's goal. Rolfo for Sweden. You can keep right up to date over on Sky Sports News.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
You're watching Friday Night on Sky News. Coming up. How the city that never sleeps stopped for a second.
And on News at 10, the latest reaction to Israel's admission that its military made a grave mistake when they killed 7 aid workers, as well as analysis of what we know about what happened. We'll have new developments tonight in the MP sexting case, plus plans to put millions into cricket to make the sport more accessible. Join me at 10.
Push the protesters further back here. There's around 200 or 300 still remain.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
This van goes onto the streets of Plymouth 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
These facilities at the moment are a lifesaver. It's all we've got.
From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region, hearing from people who have real stories.
I'll have nowhere to live for about 3 or 4 months.
There are still people inside the properties here. They're coming from the epicentre of what is now a global health pandemic. We were seeing and speaking to young women who were selling themselves right on the high street. It was desperately sad, and the fact it was happening right in the heart of this community. Before Brexit, these oysters were being exported to the EU, but the trade stopped overnight.
What's your feeling about the future then?
Bleak. Might all be finished, I don't know.
Welcome back. President Biden has been to Baltimore to meet the survivors and the families of the victims of the bridge that collapsed there. He promised to rebuild the structure, which collapsed after it was hit by a container ship around 10 days ago. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has the story.
10 days since Baltimore's Key Bridge collapsed, President Biden was in the skies to see the impact. A president who trumpets his efforts to fix this country's aging infrastructure. A president facing a tough election in November. It was an extraordinary moment, a tragedy, and now an economic, logistical nightmare for the region. But a freak one-off? Well, worryingly, maybe not. Just 20 miles downstream from the Key Bridge, and on the same shipping lane, is another, bigger, older, busier, and it's earned the tag, the scariest in America. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is actually two, one built in the 50s, the other in the 70s.
It's a hodgepodge of different kinds of bridges.
And with local fisherman Brian Hardman, we passed the backed-up cargo ships blocked from entering Baltimore for a closer look at this aging feat of engineering.
So when those ships come up here, they got to get on the left side of that red can and get diagonal right in the middle of the bridge. That's their navigational point.
Well, up close here underneath one of the main pylons supporting the bridge, you can see there is very little in the way of protection. A wooden buffer area here. Beyond that is the concrete butt of the structure itself. And then as we pan up, you can see the main metal support structure itself. And if a ship was to hit one of these, the impact point would be high, given the height of modern cargo vessels. Then there's the corrosion. The bridge is used by 27 million vehicles a year. 11 million tons of cargo passes under it, and yet it is classed as fracture critical.
To me, when I look at it, it's like a sitting dog, just at the mercy of the ships.
Professor Abi Agayare is a structural engineer whose view is shared by peers.
If one piece goes, a whole section of the bridge or the whole bridge entirely could go, just like the Key Bridge did. The piers or the pylons of the Bay Bridge are unprotected, just like the Key Bridge was. So that worries me. For a bridge that is that long, with that much traffic, it needs to be protected.
Commissioner Jim Moran is a local politician. The bridge has been a thorn in his side for years.
The Bay Bridge is, you know, as some people know, it's been ranked as one of the scariest bridges.
And we've been under it today, and it doesn't look like it's in great shape.
No.
To a layman.
Right, and the state is spending a great deal of money. It's something everybody's looking into. It's everybody's concern.
You're a Republican,
right?
But do you see that he has handled this well?
Yes, I do. He came out right out of the gate saying, you know, the federal government's going to be here, and we're going to stay here, and they're helping mostly by money. We appreciate him coming out and stepping up to the plate and helping us with this.
We've asked the Maryland Transportation Authority to comment on the state of the structure. They've yet to respond.
They work on it non-stop. They got a painting crew on it. By the time they get down one end and go to the other, it's time to come back.
The disaster just upstream from here last month has put a critical, frightening focus on infrastructure across the country. Mark Stone, Sky News in Maryland.
Finally, staying in the US, there was a little shake, rattle and roll in New York today when the city and the surrounding areas were hit by an earthquake. Just for a split second, the city that never sleeps did come to a stop. This was the scene at Boonton Coffee Cafe in New Jersey, close to the epicenter. The quake was measured at a preliminary magnitude of 4.8. That's not insignificant, is it? But there was no significant damage or serious injuries reported. Undoubtedly, the best view of today's dramatic events came from the top of the Statue of Liberty. What a view. The US Geological Survey says the quake may have been felt by more than 42 million people. Incredible. Nice day there in New York, though, it looked like. Let's have a look at the weather here now. A powerful storm Kathleen will bring strong winds to many parts of Britain and Ireland this weekend. The worst of the weather, though, will be in the west. Back to this evening, we've still got a few showers over Scotland, but most other areas are under a large blanket of cloud. The winds are picking up in the southwest, and we're seeing some heavy rain over the south of Ireland and southwest England. The heavy rain is going to push northwards during the evening. The strong winds will spread up the west coast. Behind the rain, the skies are clearer with just a few showers in the west. Saturday will be very windy. Take care out there. The strongest winds will be around western coasts, where they could gust at 70 miles per hour. That's it from Friday night. Coming up, it's Sky News at 10. Neil is back next week, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.
Formula One has 500 million fans, and Salesforce helps them turn all that data into a single view of each one. Like Grace. Grace is a super fan with a lot of favorites. Formula One can track all that data in real time to give her the perfect fan moment at the perfect time.
There you go.
Which makes Grace feel, wow.